After the new gene seed had been cultivated, the Emperor sent for Axis and Kasha at once. Lionel Johnson had already left Terra to rejoin the Great Crusade on the Emperor's orders. He never lingered when the Imperium called. The two arrived in the Emperor's subterranean laboratory and descended to a chamber dominated by an enormous incubator. Inside, countless gene seeds lay in precise rows, each one perfectly round. There are two ways to obtain gene seed, the Emperor explained as he led them up to the incubator. You can take it directly from a Primarch, or you can cultivate it from a Space Marine, but these are different, purer, in form, and in origin. Axis looked closely at the smooth, unblemished sacs. I see. These are mine, he said. They're more perfect than the ones you made before. And we've limited their transformation, the Emperor added with a smile. Their combat amplification can only increase up to 5 times their normal level, not like you, who can push 50 or 100 times. Axis was not surprised by the praise, only by the Emperor's phrasing. When I purified the gene seeds of Magnus, Lionel Johnson, and Leman Russ with chi, they took on a similar roundness, he said. Your chi is remarkable. The Emperor nodded. They're cleaner than even gene seed taken directly from a Primarch. But there's still a difference. Gene seed drawn from Primarchs ultimately traces back to the warp. Over time, it tends to become infected, sprouting those fleshy nodules. That corruption is almost inevitable. Your chi can purify warp influence Axis, but you cannot forever prevent reinfection. Only the gene seed you've given me, I can guarantee it will resist the power of the warp. Axis, inject chi into these gene seeds to further purify and stabilize them, the Emperor instructed. Then we will begin the experiment. Axis hesitated. The initial trials are unstable. Can we use test subjects instead of my wolf brothers? I won't repeat putting those who bled with me at needless risk. The Emperor's face brightened. Responsible. Very good. We'll use test subjects. He turned to Micardo, who understood instantly and went to retrieve the sealed stasis pods the Emperor mentioned. Previously, with your earlier gene seeds, I created some enhanced organs. A few recruits had those implants and were placed in dormancy. These new gene seeds may give them a chance. Axis placed his palm on the incubator glass and began to feed the sacs with his chi. This time, he channeled part of his Super Saiyan power. Gene seed cultivated from S cells responded best to that kind of energy. The moment his chi touched them, the gene seeds woke, greedily absorbing the Super Saiyan chi. Axis planted a small chi seed within each one, a safeguard to let them survive inside their future hosts. After 40 minutes, the work was complete. Each gene seed pulsed faintly with a golden glow. Marvelous, Axis. These are the most unique gene seeds I've ever seen, the Emperor said. With them, we might create a special Astartes chapter, one that resists the warp and is dedicated to hunting warp-tainted foes. Axis blinked. A specialized chapter against warp daemons? Yes. The Emperor's voice grew grave. A small, elite force, no more than 1,000 warriors, perhaps only 700 or 800. All psychers. All clad in Aegis-patterned Terminator armor, armed with the most strongly enchanted weapons, consecrated with the ashes and blood of the greatest psychers. From the start, their training will focus on understanding and combating demonic entities. They would be the Imperium's spear against the demons of the warp. Axis stared at him. He already knew the name before it was spoken. You mean the Grey Knights? The Emperor's lips twitched. If your gene seeds adapt as well as I hope, then yes. Kasha leaned forward. Father, if your plan hadn't worked, whose gene seed would you have used for such a chapter? The Emperor's expression turned guarded. That is an Imperial secret. Unless, Kasha persisted, Axis's gene seeds succeed. Then I would use Axis's and abandon the other plan, the Emperor admitted. He had, in truth, considered another way, to purify a portion of Magnus's gene seed with his own psychic power, making a body of Marines immune to warp corruption. That method might have allowed the new chapter to lack any filial link to Magnus, instead forging a strange connection to the Emperor himself. But it carried risks. If Axis's gene seeds worked, they were the safer choice. Axis had a practical worry. My gene seeds don't grant psychic power. Gene seed offspring can't use chi. They only inherit the transformations. How would they fight daemons without true psyker abilities? The Emperor smiled calmly. We will implant these gene seeds into real psychers. I will personally bestow psychic blessings on them, and bind the gene seed to their minds. If I can cleanse Magnus's gene seed, certainly I can do the same for these. The result will be a chapter highly resistant to warp influence and capable of wielding psychic power in battle. Axis nodded. If that's the case, I will cooperate. Will they be publicly acknowledged as my gene seed offspring? Of course, the Emperor replied. Their golden transformation would make the connection obvious to anyone who knew how to look. But the chapter itself will operate in shadow. Only the highest ranks of the Imperium will know of them. He outlined the chapter's constraints again. All members will be psychers. The chapter will be small. They will wear Aegis Terminator armor, be equipped with the finest enchanted weapons, and receive the most intensive anti-demon training. They will not be paraded before the people of Terra. Their existence will be known only to those who must know. Axis's mind ran ahead, imagining what such a chapter could mean. The Emperor offered two names, as if testing him. One is Grey Knights, hidden in the Imperium's darker alleys. The other is Golden Knights, for the golden transformation your gene seeds confer. Axis chuckled softly. Both are fitting. Why limit ourselves to one? Perhaps there should be two, Grey Knights and Golden Knights. The Emperor's smile was wry. At most, only one such chapter can be formed right now. Do you think I don't wish for more? A suggestion came from the Emperor instead. Your legion will be called Golden Knights. This smaller, secret chapter will be the Grey Knights. Axis felt the weight of what was being offered, not just a name, but a purpose and a destiny. He had crossed a gulf few could fathom, the possibility that his gene seed would be the seed of a force dedicated to hunting the warp itself. Around them, the gene seeds in the incubator glowed like stars, and the future of an unseen order began quietly to take shape. Chapter 142, Golden Knight, weakened version of Super Saiyan transformation. Golden Knight? That name always sounds a little odd. My legion would be better called the Saiyan Legion. I think Saiyan Legion has a ring to it, the Emperor said. Saiyan Legion? What kind of name is that? Your legion's members will be able to transform with golden hair and a golden aura one day. If we're choosing a name, it should be grand and related to gold. If you don't like Golden Knight, how about Golden Legion? Shining Legion? Gold Shining Legion? Radiant Gold Knight? Holy Radiance Knight? Holy Legion? He rattled off more than a dozen options. Axis found the whole thing embarrassingly chunibu, but the names were undeniably impressive within the Imperial Army. To the common folk, any of those titles would evoke the majesty of the Imperium. My legion will be called Golden Knight, Axis decided. He figured names like Golden Legion, Holy Radiance Knight, Templar Knight, and Holy Knight could serve as titles for future sub-legions. I like it, the Emperor said. Golden Knight is majestic and fitting, especially since your transformation is all shimmering gold. Axis could only shrug. Dealing with a father-in-law in full chunibu was a unique trial. While they talked, Micardo had already brought several stasis pods into the underground lab. The test subjects had completed the initial Astartes modifications. Only the new gene seed and the black carapace remained to be implanted. Emperor, I've brought 4 test subjects. That should be enough. These warriors have all the superhuman organs already. We only need to implant the black carapace in the gene seed, Micardo reported. Teacher, how many space marines like this are in stasis? Axis asked. About 1,000 in total, all dormant, Micardo replied. Over 3,000 people had undergone modification, but more than 1,000 died due to problems with Axis's gene seed. If this experiment succeeded, it would be a major correction. Axis nodded. With those 1,000+ in stasis added to his own 1,000+, his legion would begin with over 2,000 strong and could be expanded from there. All right, let's begin. The Emperor nodded and, with Micardo, opened a stasis pod and began the surgeries. They removed the old gene seed from the thyroid area and chest cavity, then took a new gene seed that shimmered with a faint golden light and implanted it into the chest. The moment the new gene seed entered the body, the stasis subject began to change dramatically. Axis's S cells started to replace the ordinary Saiyan cells. These S cells normally remained dormant and could coexist with human cells. They were not as aggressive as pure Saiyan cells and could even neutralize and balance human and Saiyan cell interactions. The Emperor and Micardo watched the monitors closely. The subject's heart pounded as the implant activated. All the superhuman organs reacted, but the S cells quickly suppressed and balanced the reaction, achieving a delicate coexistence with the human cells. Muscles that had been tense from overactive science cells gradually relaxed. The purplish-blue veins that had shown under the skin receded, replaced by a healthy glow beneath the epidermis. Vital signs stabilized. "Vitals are extremely stable," Micardo exclaimed, excitement barely kept in check. "The conflict between the two cell types is weakening. No, it's reached a state of symbiosis." The Emperor's suspicion was confirmed. Axis's S cells could balance Saiyan and human cells. Through the virtual display, he watched the previously chaotic Saiyan cells being enveloped by a new cellular structure. The glowing S cells wove an intricate network between human and Saiyan cells, acting as mediators and achieving a stable symbiosis. Inside the chamber, the sleeping warrior twitched and golden energy seeped from his pores for a moment before vanishing. Some Super Saiyan characteristics were activated, but they're controllable, Axis explained quietly. They gain a power boost without losing themselves to Berserker Rage. This was an extremely weakened version of the Super Saiyan transformation. It wasn't even enough to surpass a full-blooded Saiyan at peak, but it did multiply strength. It was modest, but without any external chi enhancement, reaching this level was still a significant achievement. Micardo rapidly recorded the data. Muscle density increased by 30%, bone strength 20% of a normal Astartes, metabolic rate decreased by 20%, which means sustained combat power and a longer lifespan. Saiyans lived somewhat longer than humans, roughly 150 to 200 years, and their appearance rarely changed after adulthood. Those traits would carry over to Axis's gene seed offspring. These Astartes would have a lifespan limit, but lived decades longer than ordinary Astartes and would not suffer a decline in combat effectiveness with age. They would remain at peak ability until they died of old age. The Emperor scanned the data with satisfaction. These were warriors of his ideal. If they ever reached their full golden transformation, their combat power might even rival the Custodes. Next was to test whether the subject could use Axis's Super Saiyan transformation, how long it could be sustained, and what burden it would place on the body. Axis himself could amplify by 50 to 100 times. These modified warriors could reach a maximum of roughly 5 times. Micardo completed the final procedure by implanting the black carapace. After implantation, it would take months for the connection points for power armor to grow into the skin. Micardo, begin mass modifications immediately. I want to see 1,000 Golden Knights awaken within a month and complete their final Astartes modifications together, the Emperor ordered. Only when all surgeries were done would they know the true combat effectiveness of Axis's gene seed work. Understood, Emperor. Leave it to me. In a month, you'll see the finished product, Micardo promised. Over the next month, the dormant warriors all received Axis's gene seed and black carapace implants. In addition, members of the Space Wolves came into the depths of the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra under Axis's direction. Following a heartfelt speech by the Emperor and Axis, the former gene seed offspring of Russ officially became Axis's gene seed offspring. The replacement surgeries went quickly. These were seasoned Astartes veterans who only needed a gene seed swap, a procedure that took a day or two. The remainder of the time was for adaptation. Axis selected several of the best of his newly modified warriors and brought them to the training ground the moment they had adapted. The Emperor arrived as well, accompanied by several custodes. This test would determine the true combat strength of Axis's gene seed offspring. Theoretically, these soldiers would be about 30 to 50% stronger than ordinary Astartes overall. After using the Golden Transformation, any one of them could take on 4 or 5 ordinary Astartes by himself. That was without any external chi amplification. Adding chi would raise their power even more. Begin, 4 against 1. Let your gene seed offspring fight a custodes, the Emperor commanded. Caesar, an old friend of Axis, oversaw the test with the custodes squad that had accompanied Axis before. A custodes in golden armor, after a brief nod with his comrades, stripped to black undergarments and took his place at the center of the field. Axis's 4 gene seed offspring did the same. This was a raw, unarmored test of physical combat. The Custodes began with terrifying suppression. His movements were lightning fast, each punch and kick pinpoint precise, and his strength far beyond that of a normal Astartes. Bang! One Golden Knight was blasted across the field by a heavy punch, slamming into the training ground wall and denting metal. Crack! A second had his ribs shattered by a sweeping kick. Boom! A third tried to block and was smashed to his knees, spitting blood after an elbow to the face. Whoosh! The fourth barely glimpsed the Custodes' movement before a chop to the neck floored him. This wasn't a fight, it was a complete crushing. The gap between baseline Astartes and a Custodes was enormous. Of course, this excluded any abnormal Astartes. These were brand new recruits, and the Custodes' baseline was in a class of its own. Just as the Custodes prepared to finish, the four Golden Knights slowly rose, their expressions changing. Golden energy surged from them. Their hair flashed brilliant gold, pupils burning with fighting spirit, muscles swelling and bones hardening as their S-cells fully activated. They had entered Super Saiyan mode. Their strength leapt roughly fivefold, resilience, speed, strength, and reaction times all multiplied. The Custodes' pupils tightened. He felt danger. Boom! One Golden Knight charged with a fist traced by a golden afterimage and struck the Custodes, who had to reel back to absorb the impact. Bang! 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 The tide of the fight reversed. The Golden Knight's blows fell like a storm, and the Custodes was finally forced into a bitter, desperate struggle. His technique remained flawless, but he was forced to absorb blows from a superior force. After the transformation, the Golden Knight's power had qualitatively changed. Crack! The Custodes' guard was broken. One powerful punch drove him back several steps. The battlefield had shifted. The Custodes now found himself at a disadvantage. The Golden Knights pressed their assault. His defeat seemed only a matter of time. Enough, the Emperor called, and the battle ceased abruptly. The four Golden Knights immediately halted. Their golden energy ebbed, and their hair returned to normal. They knelt together, exhausted. The Super Saiyan transformation still exacted a toll. Though weakened, it produced noticeable side effects, mainly physical exhaustion rather than permanent damage. A short rest would restore them. The Custodes rose in silence, chest sore from nearly being knocked down. He returned to his comrades, chastened. He had been suppressed by 4 Space Marines and would need to train harder. Micardo ordered medical teams to take readings and assess the Golden Knight's condition. In their normal state, the 4 aren't a match for a Custodes, he analyzed. But once they access the Golden Super Saiyan transformation, their individual combat power approaches Custodes level, and 4 together can even defeat a Custodes. However, the transformation places a burden on the body. My estimate, if they transform and exit the state within 3 minutes, their bodies can recover with only a short rest. Over 5 minutes, they need 1 to 2 hours of recovery. More than 10 minutes requires at least a day of rest. Exceeding 30 minutes risks cardiac arrest, cellular collapse from S-cell amplification. They could die. Micardo's conclusion was clear and detailed. The Super Saiyan transformation greatly boosted Astartes' combat effectiveness, but duration had to be strictly managed. Fighting within 3 minutes was optimal. The longer they stayed transformed, the heavier the strain. Beyond half an hour, the biological cost became fatal. However, this is the maximum intensity transformation, Micardo explained. If you reduce the multiplier to around 2 times, they can at least maintain the state and fight for 10 minutes without injuring themselves. After an hour of fighting, they would only need to deactivate the transformation and rest, no fatal damage. In the original design, Axis's Super Saiyan-style transformation was capped at 5 times. The base form was 2 times, but to test the full effect, all the Golden Knights had activated the 5 times extreme. On a real battlefield, the Astartes would rarely need that level except in an emergency. Astartes implanted with Axis's gene seed were already stronger than ordinary Space Marines. The 5 times transformation was intended as a desperate, last resort power-up. In routine engagements, the base form, or 2 times to 3 times, was more than enough. "Teacher, your idea is good," Axis replied, "but I have to say this. S-cells can't be constrained. As S-cells increase in their bodies, their strength grows, their physiology evolves, and the transformation effect will only improve." If you underestimated the Saiyan line and the role of S-cells, Axis continued, you'd be in trouble. The potential of Scion physiology was virtually infinite. Even though the initial design gave a 50-fold base amplification and Axis's implants had constraints, truly powerful Astartes, later generations like Sigismund, Abaddon, or Calgar, could potentially break those limits on their own. So long as their bodies could endure it, S-cells would keep empowering them. 10 times, 20 times, those weren't impossibilities as long as the host could survive the strain. Axis's gene seed, he asserted, was the most perfect, safest, most efficient, and most powerful among the gene seeds used by the Legions Astartes, stable against warp erosion and endowed with incredible transformational capability. If such a prodigy does appear, that's a good thing, the Emperor said calmly. The restriction is not meant to limit them, but to protect them. If they can safely activate higher transformations, you, as their gene father, can guide them. There were now well over 1.5 million Astartes, and the number was still climbing. The Emperor estimated that if the Great Crusade continued for a few more decades, the Astartes could exceed 2.5 million, perhaps even break 3 million. With numbers like that, exceptional individuals would surely emerge. Many of the top veterans already rivaled the Custodes, some could best them. If such powerhouses received Axis's gene seed, the consequences would be staggering. Regrettably, most of those veterans were already leaders in their own legions. Reimplanting them wasn't feasible without enormous political cost. Axis, the Emperor said, you must establish a rule in your legion. In ordinary combat, they may freely use 2 times and 3 times transformations. But to activate 4 times or 5 times for combat requires authorization, approval from an officer of captain rank or higher, unless it's a true life or death emergency. The clause should allow use when survival demands it, Axis added. Or if a warrior has decided to die with the enemy, if activating the extreme form is the only way to take them down, then it should be permitted. You must understand my fear, the Emperor warned. If this transformation becomes a tool for suicidal attacks, it will cause chaos. Mortal worship of power can drive people to do irrational things. I will teach them not to misuse it, Axis promised, especially not to make pointless suicidal charges. The Emperor relaxed. Good, I will entrust this legion to you. I will announce your status as a Gene Seed Primarch. You will be recognized as a Gene Seed Primarch created by me, and you will take my daughter, the Imperial Princess, in marriage. This was the era of the Gene Seed Primarch's return, so Axis's elevation would not be controversial. He would be received as one more returning Primarch. Axis nodded. With this recognition, he would formally enter the Imperium's highest councils. A month later, 3,000 newly armored Space Marines stood before him, plated in golden power armor, the nascent Golden Knights Legion, Axis's first legion. Holy Terra had assigned recruits to him directly under the Emperor's orders. Lionel Johnson had also supplied the men he had promised. Recruits from the Caliban Knightly Order would be implanted with Axis's gene seed and after full modification, join the Legion as well. Across other worlds, provincial governments were ordered to send suitable youths to Holy Terra for selection and augmentation. The Emperor aimed to grow Axis's Legion to over 100,000 in 10 years and have it join the Great Crusade. Hail the Great Emperor! Hail Gene Father Axis! The 3,000 Astartes snapped to attention and saluted the direction where Axis and the Emperor stood. My gene seed offspring, Axis said, stepping forward, you are the newly formed Golden Knights. Be my pride and the pride of the Imperium. Great Gene Father, we are your gene seed offspring. We are the Golden Sons for the Golden Knights Legion. Their voices crashed like thunder. Golden light flared upwards, a halo of radiance wrapped around the Golden Knights, as if flames wreathed their armor. Their hair and brows glimmered gold. Even in their weakened form, the Super Saiyan transformation's appearance was dazzling, an awe-inspiring spectacle. And their power had increased so much that to ordinary men, they were demigods. Axis is also a Gene Seed Primarch created by me, the Emperor announced to the gathered dignitaries. He will be the 18th returning Gene Seed Primarch after Chagatahan. The Emperor had erased Axis's previous identity as a space wolf and folded him into Imperium records with a new history. Axis would return to the Imperium as a high-ranking official and Gene Seed Primarch. At that moment, only 4 Gene Seed Primarchs remained unreturned, those of the 12th, 19th, 8th, and 20th Legions. "Hail the great Gene Seed Primarch," roared the crowd in the Imperial Palace Plaza. Axis stood beside the Emperor, smiling and waving. He now stood about 3.5 meters tall. The infusion of ki power could temporarily enlarge the body, much like Master Roshi's transformation from a wizened Eldar into a hulking figure. Even without the Super Saiyan visual, Axis could swell his frame with ki, as the Emperor could with psychic augmentation. The image was important. Primarchs were giants in the eyes of the people. Remaining only 2.1 meters tall would have looked peculiar. Two other Gene Seed Primarchs had been summoned to witness the investiture: Rogal Dorn of the 7th Legion and Horus of the 16th. They offered Axis their formal blessings and welcomed him into the circle of Primarchs. Axis's past military record with the Space Wolves was preserved selectively. Official histories stated that he had been found by Lionel Johnson, Leman Russ, and Chagatai Khan, and brought into the Imperium. He had played a decisive role in the Raiden War, defeating the Raiden and returning triumphantly to the Emperor's embrace. "Silence! I have one more announcement." The Emperor's voice rolled across the plaza of Holy Terra, authoritative and calm. The cheering crowd and the officials froze, craning their necks to look at the golden figure hovering above the dais. Every face turned to the Lord of Mankind. "Today I will introduce someone very important to me." At the Emperor's signal, Kasha stepped forward. She wore a pale purple robe and carried a staff humming with psychic power. The way she moved, calm, composed, unmistakably powerful, made the citizens murmur with curiosity. Even Horus and Rogal Dorn, among the Primarchs present, watched her closely. They had always assumed Kasha was one of Axis's lieutenants, a powerful psyker who followed him. Now the truth was about to be revealed. "You may all wonder who she is. I announce now that she is my daughter. She is my true daughter, the Imperial Princess of the Imperium." The words exploded through the plaza. Whispers ran like wind through the crowd and the officials. No one had expected the Emperor to have a daughter. The Primarchs looked stunned. If the Emperor had a daughter, could she be their sister? "Kasha was born centuries ago," the Emperor continued. "Like me, she shares an immortal constitution. For reasons of state, she was assigned a long, secret mission to seek and guide the new Gene Seed Primarch, Axis. Only recently has she returned to my side. She is the elder sister of all the Primarchs." The explanation fell like a stone into the stillness. The Emperor had fathered many children over the long years, but Kasha alone had inherited his semi-immortality and psychic gift. Others born to mortal women lived only marginally longer than normal humans. All his true bound companionship had been with Erda, and from that union, many of the Primarchs were derived. In physiologic terms, because Kasha was also a child of him and Erda, she was their elder sister. He had kept the Primarchs close on Terra for a reason. His foresight, and the curse of the four gods, had warned that many would someday turn against him. Raising them himself and keeping them near could secure their loyalty, or at least delay their betrayal. But Erda's interventions long ago and the subtleties of chaos had scattered the Primarchs across the galaxy. Kasha, who had once been misled into aiding her mother, had come to understand the error of her ways. Now she had helped find and guide Axis, one of the most potent human forces in the Imperium, and returned to his side. Horus, standing near the Emperor, looked disoriented. "Father, do you mean Kasha is our elder sister? You thought she was younger?" The Emperor said with a faint smile. "No, Kasha is your elder sister in the truest sense." Rogal Dorn approached with composed formality, bowed, then saluted. "It is an honor. Welcome, Father's eldest daughter, Imperial Princess Kasha, elder sister to us Primarchs." Kasha smiled and returned the gesture. "Greetings, younger brothers." Horus recovered himself, bowed slightly, and accepted her as his elder sister. His place as the Emperor's favored son remained. A new sister changed titles, but not his standing. The crowd erupted into praise. "Praise the Emperor! Praise the Imperial Princess! Bless the Imperial Princess! Welcome the Imperial Princess back to the Imperium!" Flowers rained from hands and balconies as the citizens celebrated the rare double return, the new Gene Seed Primarch Axis and the Emperor's daughter. Among the faces in the crowd, however, one stood out. Wrapped in a plain robe, a woman watched the exchange with an unreadable, strained expression. Kasha forgiven, released from whatever confinement had kept her away. How had this come to pass? The woman did not forget what had happened, nor the price those events had exacted. The Emperor's gaze flicked to her. With a single look, he recognized the woman he had loved and lost, Erda. She was there, at last, standing in the throng where she had once fought and fled. He had always known where she hid. He could have hunted her down with custodians or an Astartes squad. Yet he had never struck. There was a tenderness he could not erase, a hope, however faint, that she might one day see her error and return. Axis, standing at the Emperor's side, narrowed his eyes. Through his chi he sensed a life force unlike any ordinary mortal's, the aura of an immortal. The Emperor's expression sharpened when Axis communicated his discovery psychically. "Father," Axis said, voice low, "I detect an immortal among the crowd. Her psychic signature is strong, almost like a lighthouse in my perception." The Emperor's face went momentarily tight. "There are many long-lived ones in the galaxy. She may simply have come to observe." "Father," Axis pressed, eager, "if she is who I think she is, the Imperium could use her. Her psychic power rivals Teacher Mikardo's. She is only slightly weaker than Kasha at present. She would be invaluable. May I attempt to parley with her?" The Emperor's gaze held, unreadable. Around them, the crowd still sang and cheered, unaware of the dangerous history folded into that lone robed figure. Axis's chi thrummed with anticipation. The memory of Erda's past transgressions and the catastrophic consequences those choices had sown hung between the two immortals, like a blade waiting to fall. Chapter 145. "Go ahead, Horus, it is you, mother." Axis. Shut up. "Oh, I understand, father-in-law. That's your old friend, isn't it? Did something unpleasant happen between you two?" Axis joked, goading with a theatrical sweep of his hand. His gesture drew the attention of the two Primarchs standing nearby. Horus and Rogal Dorn followed his gaze and saw her, the robed woman standing below. The sight of her made both Primarchs' hearts jump in a way they could not explain. It was the same quickening they had felt when first standing before the Emperor, an instinctive, almost genetic recognition. For a terrifying instant, they felt dragged back to that original encounter, bound again by blood. "Father, what are you and Axis looking at? Is there something wrong with that person down there?" Horus asked. Inside the Emperor, a complicated war of feeling raged. "What should I do? Damn it, what should I do?" He forced his face back into its practiced calm. "Nothing. She's irrelevant," he said stubbornly to himself and aloud, refusing to give Horus the answer forming in his chest. Why had she come here? Kill her, capture her, exile her. What was the proper response? Could he be utterly merciless? If he could, she would not be standing there now. Assassins could have taken her long ago, immortal perhaps, but not invulnerable. When this woman had first stood before him years ago, the Emperor had felt something he hadn't expected, a sensation like finding a mate. At that time, though, her response had been worship, fanatic and idolatrous, not the love he had hoped for. Later, something had grown between them. If it were possible seeing her again, he wanted to look away and let her go. But Axis had spotted her and in doing so had drawn Horus and Rogal Dorn's attention. "Father," Horus persisted, "that person gives me a very strange feeling. It feels wonderful." Rogal Dorn shared the sensation but remained silent, standing immobile beside the Emperor. Horus, raised under a unique, intense paternal affection, could not let it go. He had always assumed the Primarchs had been fathered by the Emperor alone, without mothers. But now that a woman stood there, the pieces of a different story began to assemble in his mind. Man and woman produced children. Could this be his mother? The Emperor, unwilling to answer, chose instead to drown the moment in spectacle. He spread his arms and spoke loudly to the gathering square, drawing the crowd's attention away. "I also have joyous news for all the people of the Empire. Soon there will be a grand wedding. My daughter, Kasha, eldest princess of the Empire, shall be married." He intentionally raised his voice and flourished his arms, hoping the gesture would speak to her. He wanted her to understand. Leave now. Be gone, and do not show yourself again. He hoped their old understanding would suffice, that she would take the hint and slip away. Erda looked up at him from below, and in an instant understood. No matter how cold and ruthless he appeared to others, he could not entirely shed feeling. If he still wished to bind humanity and watch over it, he was not a god, but still a man. She could never agree with his methods. She had not survived the ages to see humanity returned to feudal rule and made into instruments of war. She had never wanted his sons to become his executioners. The crowd erupted into frenzied applause at the emperor's proclamation. The revelation of Kasha's identity and a royal wedding thrilled the masses. Horus, however, was not thinking of ceremony. He was thinking of the woman who was now turning to leave. "Father," he began. The emperor's stern glance cut him off. He had been intentionally evasive, and Horus felt a recoil at the thought of disobeying. He had nearly convinced himself to step back and watch when something pushed him, an inexplicable shove at the base of his spine. Impulsively, Horus leapt down from the platform and landed directly in front of the woman. Axis's lips curved into a small, secretive smile. "Don't be polite," he seemed to say. "You're the emperor's favorite. Take the fall. Test your father's patience." Horus would get away with it. Erda stopped mid-turn and looked up at the tall young man in white armor. Standing there, the recognition Horus had felt at a distance swelled into something undeniable. This woman, shorter than he, unassuming, filled him with the same binding sense he had always associated with the emperor. Only the name that had been forming in his mind would do. Mother? Horus breathed. The word fell like a stone. He had a mother. He had been conceived, not only by the emperor's will, but also by a woman standing here now. The realization set the Primarch's mind racing. Why had she hidden? Why had she left? All the old questions of identity and purpose flooded him at once. The emperor's face tightened. Horus had been impetuous, too impetuous. Had the emperor's indulgence encouraged this defiance? Kasha, standing near Axis, saw the woman beside Horus and the horror that washed over her. The figure was one she knew too well, too intimately. How had she not died? What did it mean for the past? Panic flared. Would the emperor kill her? Should Kasha end her with her own hands to atone for the sins of the old days? Only Rogel Dorn remained outwardly composed, as was his nature, disciplined, the one the other brothers often said was closest to godlike control. On Terra, confusion rippled through the masses. Why had a Primarch come down into the square? How had he gotten so close to a stranger? No one heard the word, mother. The Emperor's psychic will descended then like a curtain. He reached into every mind in the square, freezing the crowd's attention in place. Apart from the custodians, the Primarchs, Axis, and a few others, everyone on the planet found their perception dulled, subdued by the Emperor's power. In the Imperial Palace basement, Malkador the Sigilite had been bent over research into Axis's S-cells when the commotion above reached his ears. A longtime friend of the Emperor, Malkador read the change of tone and abandoned his work. He poured his power into a single teleportation and appeared at the Emperor's side, arriving to find Horus standing at Erda's feet and the Emperor's psychic presence gripping Holy Terra. Seeing Erda, Malkador understood at once. No wonder his old friend's composure had crumbled. The Emperor's only soft spot, his one emotional tether, was the woman before them. But why had Horus come? Why had she appeared publicly? Horus was usually measured. He did not act as storms act. "Axis, that woman, she is my mother, but she is wicked," Kasha said, her voice raw. She had been punished for her own past, imprisoned for decades, and then, through service, forgiven in part. But this woman, Kasha insisted, had been the instigator, and the Emperor had never punished her. Axis grinned. He had been the one to point Horus out. "Leave it to the father to handle. We just watch." Malkador glanced at the Emperor, took in the flicker of helplessness, and gave him a steady, reassuring look. "Trust me." Then he stepped forward toward Horus and Erda. Erda met her son's eyes with a face full of conflicting thought. She wanted to speak, to admit who she was to him. "I am your mother." She wanted to explain why she had scattered them across the galaxy, to keep them from becoming instruments of another man's ambition. But how would he take that? The Primarchs had been raised in strange places and forged into weapons. Some had been lost. Could he forgive her? She told herself that she had not been wrong. Her stubborn conviction had always been absolute. Are you my mother?" Horus asked again, voice shaking with a strange, fierce joy. "Stop, Horus. Don't go any closer. She is a sinner, an agent of terrible evil. She is not your mother." Malkador stepped between them. "No, you're lying. I can feel it. It's the same feeling I had when I first saw Father," Horus shouted. He had little love for Malkador. Neither he nor many of the other Primarchs trusted the mortal. But the feeling in his chest would not be denied. Malkador turned his gaze to Erda. "How dare you appear here? Do you think we will let you go unpunished?" "I never did anything wrong. I only did not want my children to become their father's executioners. If it were not for you," Erda's voice cracked with long simmering hatred, "our family would still be whole, living in peace." Her hatred for Malkador was fierce. She blamed him, the Sigillite, for bending the Emperor's will outward and stealing the life she had once imagined by the Emperor's side. In her mind, Malkador had been a rival for the Emperor's devotion. Then the air rippled with more movement. Around Erda, tall warriors in simple power armor appeared as if from the earth itself. Nearly 2 meters 80 in height, they raised crude weapons and trained them on Malkador. "Long time no see, Malkador," the foremost of them said through gritted teeth. "The spirits of the Thunder Warriors salute you." Malkador's nostrils flared. He thought of the legions purged and butchered, of the men who had sworn their lives to a cause and been crushed by the very hand they served. "Humph, you are the failed products of an older era," he said coldly. "You aided the Emperor in making Terra one, yes, but at what cost? How many crimes did you commit? How many innocents did you slaughter?" "We are executioners," the tall warrior bellowed back. "But executioners for whom? By whose orders? Who made us? Who commanded us? Was it not that lofty hypocrite who now sits above us?" Chapter 146. A fool uses a ruler to measure the length of others, but never measures himself. The Emperor was ruthless in dealing with the Thunder Warriors, dispatching the Custodes and the newly born Astartes to purge them. Elements of the First Legion had taken part in that operation. The Emperor did it for what he saw as humanity's greater cause, to dominate the galaxy, and the Thunder Warriors were simply too unstable compared to the Astartes. The 19 superhuman organ augmentations that created the Astartes gave them abilities beyond human limits. The Thunder Warriors' bodies, powerful though they were, could not withstand the Custodes. "I don't want to explain things you can't understand. Your vision isn't high enough," Makardo said. An ordinary soldier could not be expected to grasp the perspective of those in command. Makardo had no intention of indulging questions. More than a dozen Custodes in gleaming golden armor had formed a ring around them. The Thunder Warriors, enraged and betrayed, lunged not for Horus or Makardo, but for the nearest Custodes. They wanted to die on their own terms, to take a Custodes with them if they could. The Custodes in front of them sneered. A power glaive lanced a golden arc. The leading Thunder Warrior was impaled through the chest and fell. Another was kicked aside. The Custodes' power weapons moved like afterimages. In a blink, 5 Thunder Warriors lay decapitated. None of the other Custodes rushed in to help. Their target was Erda. Makardo had already put Erda, the mother of the Gene Seed Primarchs, under the Custodes' protection, and their superiority was absolute. Horus's face went white. "Makardo, what are you doing? The woman in front of you is my mother. She's not just mine, she's the mother of the Primarchs." "Some things you don't understand, Horus. Step back. I'm taking her into custody. Surrender, Erda." Makardo's tone was flat. If Erda showed the slightest cooperative resistance, he would find a way to spirit her away later, at the Emperor's discretion. Killing her would have been ordered long ago if it were truly desired. To murder her outright would tear away whatever last shred of humanity the Emperor preserved. Her continued presence, however, was dangerous, and she must be kept far from the Emperor and the Imperium's centers of power. Horus begged his father with his eyes. He had spent his childhood learning who he was, a Primarch created by the Emperor and returned to Holy Terra by the Mechanicus. Those 30 years he spent close to the Emperor had been the happiest of his life. He had found a father, but he had never known a mother. Among all the Primarchs, only Guilliman had found that maternal love. Now, the mother he had longed for stood before him, and his father's most trusted subordinate was about to seize her. Horus could not accept it. Rogaldorn materialized between Horus and the Custodes, his golden form blocking Horus's path. "Stand here, my brother. Do not move. Do nothing. This is the best outcome for you," Dorn warned, his gaze hard as a blade. "Rogaldorn, you feel it too. You know who she is." Horus shot back. "What of it? What we do now is for humanity. We obey Father's commands. Everything else is irrelevant, Rogal Dorn replied. His loyalty was absolute. Sentimentality was a weakness he refused. Erda looked at Horus with a bittersweet warmth. He was flesh and blood, full of emotion, everything she had wanted for her sons. Dorn, in golden armor, looked like the embodiment of everything she had tried to prevent, a living tool, cold and precise. All I wanted was for you to be free, Erda said. I wanted you to choose your own lives, not to be your father's instruments. I wanted you to be flesh and blood humans. The Primarchs were born for the Great Crusade, Rogal Dorn snapped. They were made to serve the Emperor, to serve humanity, nothing more. Father, can we talk? Let us have a family conversation. No matter what mistakes she's made, give her a chance to make amends. Horus shouted toward the Emperor, hoping his father would intervene. Dorn's obstruction forced his hand. He could contest Dorn, but he could not defeat him outright. The Emperor's voice rolled over them like thunder. I was never wrong. He wronged me, not I him. My son, I am glad you have grown into who you are. You are a flesh and blood human with free thought. But remember, you must be free. Do not be a tool. Then the thunder became contempt. Enough! The psychic pressure of that word buckled Horus on his feet. Even so, the stubbornness that marked him kept him standing. Horus stared at his father, pleading for an answer. She is nothing. The Emperor's declaration was absolute. Horus's determination faltered under the weight of it. For decades, the Emperor had treated Horus differently from the other Primarchs. Horus had been his son in a way the rest were not. Horus had been groomed, intended as the War Master, the one who would take command of the Crusade, while the Emperor turned to projects like the Webway and faster-than-light travel. Now, standing in the palace, Horus felt that plan collapse. Get back to your position, the Emperor ordered. You have disappointed me, Horus. When did you become so uncomposed? His voice struck like a bell, ringing in Horus's ears. From a distance, Axis and Kasha watched the scene, the drama playing out like a spectacle. Axis's amusement was almost palpable. Pushing Horus down had been the right move, he thought. Kasha, tense, pinched Axis's waist. You bastard, what are you enjoying? She hissed. Axis only smiled. You want me to think of something? Fine, I'll think of something. His grin was a blade. He stepped forward, voice carrying. Erda, even now you don't see how wrong you were. Because of you, some of our sons have suffered immeasurably. You were led astray. You were blinded. Axis made the accusation sharp and public, trying to turn the tide of opinion. My will was always my own, Erda shot back. I wasn't swayed. I saw your ambition. I saw the hunger for power. And look at what they are now. You turned our sons into instruments of war. Axis's smile widened into something calculating. There are those who love to walk the streets with a ruler, measuring everyone else's length while never measuring their own, or some who've sold themselves out and still help others count the money. Those people are the true fools. He paused, watching the effect of the words as eyes turned to Erda. Erda's face hardened. Axis's words, both plain and barbed, stabbed at her. Carrying a ruler and never measuring oneself, sold out and still counting someone else's coins. The mockery in his tone left a bitter stain on the air. Enough. A dangerous glint flashed in Erda's eyes. She thrust a finger toward Axis. You understand nothing, mortal. You have no right to speak here. Who do you think you are, daring to accuse me? If Macario accused her, if the Emperor accused her, even if her own children, the Geneseed Primarchs, accused her, she could accept it. But this man, Erda's contempt was plain. Even if the Emperor had declared him a Primarch today, he was not her son. Everything Axis said, both in words and in implication, suggested she had been a fool and a tool. Am I wrong? Axis asked calmly. He spoke deliberately, keeping his words vague because only the Emperor, Kasha, and Macario knew the exact truth of what had happened. Even the other Primarchs and the Custodians did not. But now their curiosity flared. If there was method behind this madness, what had their mother really done? Sensing the charge in the air, the Custodians erected a containment ward around the group and backed beyond it. The Emperor gave Kasha a sharp look, as if to ask whether she had told Axis. Kasha looked bewildered. She had guarded the secret fiercely and never spoken of it. Macario shared the Emperor's suspicion. Perhaps Kasha had told Axis, but neither man had meant to keep Axis from knowing in the long run. Axis would be crucial to the Imperium's future. Erda snorted, glaring at the Emperor. You gave birth to him with another woman, didn't you? Who raised him? You can't pretend he has any right here. It wasn't as simple as that, the Emperor said mildly. Raising a Primarch vessel required diving into the warp to seek a lesser god, then creating a proper host. To fashion such a vessel, you needed immortal genes, an extremely powerful immortal female. There were a handful of such women among humanity besides me, women like the one hidden in the Noctis Labyrinth on Mars. When I left, you did not simply replace me. You personally modified Axis, Erda shot back, but he was a naturally born human, not the product of a gene experiment. There's no need to spin fantasies. Axis understood chaos. He had studied its horrors. Only by understanding the enemy could one guard against it. I did it for my children's sake, Erda said. I did it to keep them from being bound by that tyrant. Horus and Rogel Dorn, standing nearby, exchanged looks. The Primarchs were the Emperor's divine progeny, yet they had not remained at his side. An ancient catastrophe had scattered them across the galaxy. Was their mother somehow behind that? Rogel Dorn's face was hard. He felt no affection for this woman. His purpose in life was simple and absolute, to aid the Emperor in the Great Crusade and restore humanity's greatness. If the Emperor commanded it, he would have struck her down without hesitation. Mother, Horus demanded, voice tight, why did you do this? Why scatter us through the universe? Very observant, my children, Erda replied, a bitter edge to her smile. From a few hints, you can see the shape of things. But think, if you had stayed by your father's side, you would never have been free. Look at this brother. He has already become your father's instrument. Did you ever ask how any of us felt? Axis countered. Horus's childhood was not as bleak as you imagine. His lot was better than many of ours. Rogel Dorn nodded. Mortarion, for example, had been raised on a toxic world. If not for his prodigious constitution, he would have died as an infant. How could a newborn fend for itself on an alien world? You survived, Erda said. You were my strongest children. I believed you could care for yourselves. Presumptuous, Dorn muttered. Mother, what you did was wrong, Horus said. Many of our brothers lived in hatred and privation. Some stood on the edge of death. Why didn't you try to speak with father? I can see he cares. Otherwise, he would have ripped you apart already. You scattered us, Axis said. You handed us to the void. Erda's hostility flared. You have no right to speak to me. Say one more word and I'll kill you where you stand. I'm only speaking the truth, Axis said quietly. You were deceived. You thought yourself clever, but you were used. Axis folded his arms and smiled, a small, almost playful tilt to it. Let's do a simple test. Tell me, great mother of the Primarchs, when you planned to take the Primarchs, did you ever hear whispers in your ear? When you resisted the Emperor, did you have peculiar dreams? Erda's face drained of color. Her fingers trembled. Fragments of memory she had tried to bury, soft whispers in the lab, half-glimpsed urgings she put down to stress, flooded back. What do you mean? I didn't, she stammered, her voice faltering for the first time. Macario's gaze sharpened. He noticed the change at once. Pain flickered in the Emperor's eyes. This was a dread he had hoped would prove false. He had wanted all of it to be Erda's free will. Axis's smile vanished. His eyes went hard, knife sharp. They love these tricks, he said. They will not meet the Emperor directly, so they whisper to those closest to him. He spread his hands in a mocking gesture. Was there always a voice telling you the Emperor would become a tyrant? That your sons were tools, robbed of freedom, that their very creation was immoral? Was there an intuition pushing you to resist? Horus stared at his mother, stunned. Her psychic strength was immense, second only to the Emperor, Magnus, Macario, and Kasha. What power could have bent her? A human immortal? Something else entirely? No, it was my own will. Erda cried, but the conviction was gone. Her psychic presence wavered. You're talking nonsense, she insisted, and psychic energy braided around her like flickering purple flame. I am not controlled by anyone. Father, something is wrong with her. I sense a chaotic presence within her, Axis said. At Axis's words, the Emperor moved. A tired resignation settled over him as he raised his hand and wove a golden psychic barrier around Erda. Within the ward, wisps of bluish-purple energy were forced out of her, twisting and writhing as if alive. Erda staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. No, this is impossible, she whispered. Do you understand now? Axis's voice was grave. Your so-called free will was corrupted from the start. You thought you were protecting your sons, when in truth, you almost destroyed them. The Emperor spoke, not with anger now, but with weary, iron clarity. This is why I must bring the Primarchs back. This is why I must forge the Imperium. Humanity has never been sovereign in the galaxy. There are malign things waiting for us to falter, ready to enslave our kind. I fight for humanity, and my conscience is clear. Erda sank to her knees. Tears streaked down her face as decades of stubborn certainty and long-harbored grievance collapsed into a pitiful lie. She had been seduced by those evil forces, even if unconsciously. You should be locked away beneath the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra, never to see daylight again, Axis said. If the Emperor had not restrained him, he thought, he would have fired an energy bolt on the spot. Immediately after finding Erda, Axis used his chi to probe her more closely and discovered something even the Emperor's psyker could not see, a trace of warp corruption hidden within her body. It was tiny, but real, a malignant warp influence planted to nudge her toward catastrophic decisions at critical moments. Axis knew at once this was no simple accident. Erda had been used. Axis had already suspected that Erda alone could not have scattered the gene seed Primarchs across the galaxy. Someone else had been pulling strings, humans among the Eternals who resented the Emperor's plans. The little warp residue in Erda's flesh was proof. Axis could not let that go unanswered. He used chi to shove Horus, adjusting the trajectory so Horus tumbled and landed right beside Erda. He wanted the whole truth dragged into the open. Only by seeing the horror of chaos clearly could they hope to defend against it. Axis wanted to know if the future could be changed, whether the Horus heresy could truly be averted. Mother, you were used? This is warp power. Were you manipulated by powerful psychers? Horus blurted. Fresh from guard duty and ignorant of chaos, the Emperor had kept that terrible truth secret. Horus assumed some mortal psyker had swayed Erda. No, that's not right. Erda's eyes flashed with a terrible mixture of madness and despair. Even if I was influenced, my intentions were not wrong. Look at the Empire now. Look at the conquered worlds. Do you truly care about human freedom? She fixed her gaze on the Emperor. You think you're protecting us, but... Erda, you have been trapped by those spirits for too long, the Emperor said quietly. This galaxy is darker than you imagine. Erda laughed like a thing unhinged. You say spirits. Name them. Tell your sons who you actually dealt with. You once. Her voice broke into shrill screams as the Emperor's golden presence flared. The psychic pressure he released forced the sound from her throat. She screamed once, twice, then went limp and passed out. If Erda had been allowed to speak, she might have revealed far worse. The truth of the bargain the Emperor had made and the role the Chaos Four had played, how some of the Primarchs had been taken in collusion between him and those powers, and how he later broke that bargain and monopolized the gene seed. Forcing his way out of the warp, the Chaos Gods had cursed him. Half of the Primarchs would one day betray him, returning to their true masters. That secret, the origin and true nature of the gene seed Primarchs, was buried deep in the Emperor's heart. Only his old friend Micardo knew its full weight. Even Erda had only guessed fragments. Mother, Horus cried, stepping before his mother. Father, please, don't hurt her. She will not be harmed, the Emperor said. She will be imprisoned in the deepest dungeons of Holy Terra until she has learned her mistake. Axis stepped forward. Father-in-law, you should be clear with them. Rogel, Dorn, and Horus deserve to know some of the truth. If you leave them in the dark, they will speculate wildly. It was a lesson Axis had learned. So many tragedies were sown by silence. Micardo nodded in agreement, glancing to the Emperor. The Emperor considered the ruined square, the fallen Thunder Warriors, the unconscious Erda. Very well. When we return to the Imperial Palace on Terra, I will recount the full course of events, he said. He had already told Magnus and Russ parts of the truth. Now, with the Chaos Gods showing clear interest in his children, he owed the Primarchs more. Clean this up, he ordered. Dispose of the bodies, clear the blood, and take Erda away. Lock her in the dungeon. The custodes moved at once, gathering the dead, erasing the scene. In minutes, the plaza was restored. Before the masses, the Emperor released his psychic sweep, wiping the crowd's memory of what had happened. To them, All they would remember was an official proclamation. The Empire's eldest princess would be married. My daughter will be wed to Axis, the Emperor announced. Axis is not my offspring by blood. I discovered him young, and he received modifications on Holy Terra. The revelation that Axis was not a blood brother fell like a stone to Rogel Dorn and Horus. Axis had indeed undergone imperial modification, but he was not their kin. The citizens, informed and reassured, cheered. It was odd that a gene seed Primarch would marry the Emperor's daughter, but they accepted the Emperor's word. The Emperor, Axis, and Kasha paraded around the outer perimeter of the Imperial Grand Avenue. After receiving the people's blessings, they returned to the palace. The ceremony concluded, and video of the parade would be distributed across the colonies, so every high official would know the Empire had a new returning Primarch and that its eldest princess would soon be married. Later, within the Imperial Palace, the Emperor gathered his sons before the throne. I meant to delay this, he said, but today forces my hand. There is a terrible danger in the warp that has always coveted humanity. They are called the Chaos Four: Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch. He made a point to correct their category. They are not gods in the proper sense, but terrible life forms born of negative emotions in the warp. Khorne, war and blood; Nurgle, pestilence and decay; Slaanesh, indulgence and excess; Tzeentch, change and deceit. Horus's jaw tightened. If such beings exist in the warp, how can humans safely travel there? It is dangerous, the Emperor agreed. That is why I have created safeguards. Jeller fields, Psychers under control, the Navigator families, and the Astronomicon burning on Holy Terra. These, and the Webway if it succeeds, keep our ships from being prey to those things. So Mother sent us far-flung because of warp enticement? Horus asked. You saw the warp taint I pulled from her, the Emperor said, and she was not only influenced by those things in the warp, but by some among the Eternals. The Eternal community is not united. My strength does not make everyone agree with me. A faction opposed my Gene Seed Primarch project and used Erda. The Emperor spoke of the Golden Man organization, the Eternals and modified mortals, the decadence after the Men of Iron rose, and how humanity, outsourcing its work to machines, had slipped. He admitted his fear that without outside catastrophe, the species might have birthed its own Slaanesh in time. I did all this to protect you, he said. But know this, the Chaos powers have already begun to target you. They struck when you were young. Magnus, who possesses the greatest psychic talent among you, was targeted first. He reported the interference. We acted, and I have helped him break free. For years I kept him near me for his safety. I came back to Terra to deal with Axis's return, and did not expect to encounter Erda. Rogel Dorn's voice was hard. We will not be seduced by these things. We must be strict about Psychers. Axis answered more measuredly. Do not confuse hatred for control. Psychers are not to blame for their gifts, but we must manage them. I have seen Psychers unintentionally kill ordinary people. Power without training is dangerous. We will organize them, Kasha said. Magnus proposed an intellect library and a program to find and train Psychers. We will collect them, select the fit, train sanctioned Psychers to serve the Empire. The powerful can join the Space Marines and be integrated into the intellect library. Under supervision, we can keep both Psychers and the people safe. The plan comes from Magnus, the Emperor said. We must neither demonize nor ignore Psychers. They are part of humanity, and if you knew the true nature of the Gene Seed, you would understand whereby their souls are tied to the warp. Their power can be tremendous. I have reservations, Rogel Dorn shot back. My legion does not need an intellect library. I already have one, Axis said, and I support the intellect library. So do I, Horus said. The palace hummed with consequence. The Emperor had revealed a fragment of the truth, enough to change how his sons thought and how the Empire would move forward. Plans for sanctioned Psychers, new safeguards, and the shadow of curses and bargains left unspoken hung over them all. The battle against the warp, and whatever bargains had once been made, was only just becoming clear. Chapter 149. The resistance to think tank promotion is a hard, stinky stone. Horus was not particularly opposed to Psychers. After all, his mother, his sister, and his father were all Psychers. It was true that Psychers could, without meaning to, harm those around them, and their impact on society could be more severe than that of mutants or subhumans. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater was plainly wrong. The Imperium relied on psychers. Without them, warp travel at even the most basic level would be impossible. Space Marine intellect libraries are vital, Axis said. They possess powerful psychic abilities married to the enhanced bodies of Space Marines. Their strength surpasses that of ordinary Space Marines. They can perform special missions, use potent psychic powers to aid the Legion in battle, manipulate elemental forces, even create localized temporal reversals, foresee certain events, and see clear visions. For example, Kasha and I often combine psychic teleportation to strike Xenos. The importance of intellect libraries was self-evident. If they had not been essential, 10,000 years later, no chapter would have made them standard. There were exceptions. Rogel Dorn's gene seed had always been averse to psychers. The Black Templars, for instance, had no intellect library, whereas the Imperial Fists, as the mother chapter, did maintain one. And yet the Black Templars had become something of an icon among successors, a chapter that, in some respects, exceeded its progenitor in zeal and size. Then we can call a Primarch-level meeting and see what our brothers think, if they can accept Space Marine Legion intellect libraries, Dorn suggested. In the current moment, Horus supported the plan, the Emperor had not objected, Micardo had not yet spoken, and Axis and the new eldest princess supported it. Dorn was at a disadvantage. Only a Primarch Council could settle the matter. Dorn expected Mortarion to side with him. "Stop arguing. There is no need for a Primarch-level meeting," the Emperor said, waving his hand. "I approve the intellect library plan. All legions must cultivate intellect libraries." He had considered it carefully. Axis and Kasha were right. Intellect libraries significantly increased a legion's combat power. Several Primarchs had already discussed the idea with him privately. Magnus had proposed it. Lionel Johnson, Sanguinius, Chagatai Khan, and even the recently departed Lion had shown their support. "Your command is supreme, Father," Rogel Dorn said on one knee. With the Emperor having spoken, he had no further protest. "The Intellect Library program will be led by Magnus's Legion," Axis added. "We only need to provide some gene seed. The rest, selection, training, modification, can be left to Magnus." That was convenient. In the far future, obtaining a suitable intellect library was an ordeal. A candidate might appear only once in 100 black ships, then training required vast time and resources. Prospero could now supply a one-stop service, selecting, modifying, training, and delivering candidates. "I believe that applies only to candidates who carry my gene seed," Rogel Dorn countered. "If the program is necessary, each legion should cultivate their own. Prospero should not be the sole provider." Axis's eyes narrowed. Dorn was stubborn, rigid as a stone in a latrine, Axis thought with private amusement. The purity of a legion's gene seed and the bonds between its sons mattered. Even a psyker who carried a legion's gene seed might be suspect if he were an outsider. "I stand with Dorn on this," Horus said. "The cultivation of intellect libraries should be done by each legion itself when possible." The Emperor found a middle path. The first batch of intellect libraries will be trained on Prospero. Once they finish, they will be distributed to the legions. In future, each legion will cultivate its own intellect libraries. It was the most practical solution. The other legions lacked the knowledge and infrastructure to train librarians. Prospero had an abundance of psychers and the expertise to begin the program. Axis and Horus exchanged looks and nodded. Even Rogel Dorn conceded. So be it. I will have our psychers inform the Primarchs. And if your legions already have psychers or find powerful candidates, you may send them to Prospero for training, the Emperor concluded. "We obey your command, Great Emperor," came the unified reply. "Very well. You may all disperse. After a while, Axis and Kasha's wedding will take place. Horus and Dorn return to the Great Crusade after the ceremony, swiftly. Axis, you will remain on Holy Terra to form your legion. Once it's formed, you will join the Crusade. Oh, Axis, remember the task I gave you." Axis and Kasha's wedding was to be small and held on Holy Terra. It did not require recalling all the Primarchs. "Yes, Father," came the echoing response. One of them added with a crooked grin, "Yes, Father-in-law." "I'm a bit tired today," the Emperor admitted, waving them away. "You may leave. Let me rest." The day had drained him. He would soon need to meet with Erda alone. They bowed and left the palace. Just outside the gate, Axis called after Horus and Dorn. "Horus, Dorn, stay with me a moment. I have something good to share." The Emperor had told Axis to use his chi to strengthen Horus and Dorn. Axis, never one to miss an opportunity, intended to follow the instruction and teach Dorn a lesson at the same time. "No interest," Rogel Dorn said bluntly. He felt no need to speak with Axis further, nor to accept any of his gifts. Horus smiled. What kind of gift? He had his own questions. Someone had shoved him from behind earlier, and the culprit seemed likely to be Axis. Axis put an arm around each of their shoulders and grinned. "Ha ha! Follow me!" Horus went along willingly, chatting and laughing. Dorn tried to pull free, but Axis's grip was iron. He could only move where Axis led. Axis dragged them down into the palace's underground training halls. Dorn's face flushed as he was forced along. "Dorn, are you all right? Your face is red. Do you feel unwell?" Axis asked innocently. "Just say what you want," Dorn snapped, wrenching his arm away. His strength was immense. Axis had to work to restrain him. "Not much. I think Primarchs should foster camaraderie. Between men, there isn't much a fight can't sort out. So let's spar." Axis cracked his knuckles. Horus stepped forward. "Axis, the good thing you mentioned, it's not just a simple fight, is it?" "You know my key," Axis said. "It can enhance your physical attributes, make you stronger. But we need preliminaries, warm-ups. I won't bully you, Dorn. You and Horus can come at me together later." Axis's tone betrayed the plan. Rough them up first, then strengthen them. The Emperor had given him the freedom to use chi as he saw fit. He would interpret that creatively. "No need for Horus," Dorn said coldly. He walked into the center of the training pit, golden power armor gleaming. "If it's a fight you want, I'll give you one." "Fine, I'll go easy on you," Axis said, putting one hand behind his back. "I'll fight with only one hand and without power armor, while you keep yours on." "You're arrogant," Dorn growled. "This is confidence," Axis replied. "Let's make it interesting. I'll keep my hands behind my back and only use my legs. That should be fair." Dorn's jaw tightened. The underground hall felt suddenly small as the two Primarchs faced one another. An odd wager of pride and power, the air between them charged with the promise of combat. Chapter 150 kicked Dorn into doubting life. "I am also a barbarian." Axis had reverted to his normal height, about 2 meters and a hair, and with a faint smile he gestured to Rogel Dorn, clasping his hands behind his back. "Come at me with everything you've got. If you manage to touch me even once, I'll call it your win. How's that?" Even Horus, standing nearby, frowned. Axis was outrageously overconfident. Rogel Dorn was no pushover. If they fought fully armored and serious, with the strength Axis had just shown, Dorn might be hard-pressed. But to do this without power armor, using only his feet, and to declare a touch of victory, that was insulting. Dorn's expression darkened. This opponent's strength was enormous, even greater than Vulcan, the lord of the fire dragon, once thought the strongest among the Primarchs. Dorn admitted he might not be able to beat Axis, but to be forced to fight unarmored and be kicked around, wasn't that humiliation? "Horus, Dorn, we are all gene seed Primarchs of the Imperium. We cannot let a conflict between us escalate. Calm down. Both of you, stop." Horus stepped between them and pleaded. "Let's be clear," Dorn said coldly. "I hold no personal grudge against Axis. I only oppose his intellect library plan. It's his narrow thinking. I never said he must fight unarmored or with his feet only." "He didn't want this fight. He had been dragged into it." "That's exactly what I said," Axis replied. "Just come at me. I'll go easy on you." "Humph, your talk is barbaric," Dorn sneered. The man reminded him of Leman Russ and the Lion in temperament. Axis even admitted that he'd grown up in a similar environment. "Consider me a barbarian," Axis said, almost amused. "What are you going to do about it?" "Both of you, enough!" Horus barked helplessly. "Move aside." Dorn shoved Horus away and surged forward. The Gene Seed Primarch's speed was terrifying. In an instant, he became a golden blur and swung his fist at Axis. "Get out of the way, Axis!" Horus shouted nervously. Dorn wasn't holding back. His power armor engaged fully. A single fully committed punch from him could kill an unarmored Primarch. But the strike only met a faint afterimage. Axis had moved behind him. "When?" Dorn leapt back, eyes searching. Axis had apparently been standing still when the punch began. In a sliver of time, he'd been behind Dorn. "What, you missed that? Fine, I'll slow down." Axis's voice became an afterimage. He appeared in front of Dorn and launched a spinning kick that sent Dorn skidding. Dorn steadied himself with a hand on the ground, and Axis was already in front of him again. A sidekick hurled Dorn away. The force scorched 2 marks into the deck where his power boots had dug in. Before Dorn regained his footing, Axis inverted above his head like a specter, legs a flurry of afterimages, kicking and striking. Dorn couldn't follow the trajectory. He felt blows to his face. Axis hadn't hit him elsewhere. He had been kicking his face the whole time. Dorn's face swelled, his rage flaring as he tried to focus on a single target among the moving illusions. Each of Dorn's attacks was cataclysmic, enough to shatter city walls, yet Axis simply shifted, sidestepped, and raised his leg with unnerving precision. Not a single punch grazed his armor. "Hands are just 2 doors, feet do all the hitting," Axis whispered in Dorn's ear, and a force slammed into Dorn's lower back. Axis's soul stepped lightly on his spine, using the leverage to vault into the air and land behind him. One foot, like a hammer, struck Dorn's chest. Dorn was thrown backward and crawled for a few seconds to his feet, even with his armor's protection. Rage completely consumed Dorn. He overloaded his systems and surged forward. The assault mode of his armor flared blue as his gauntlet generators pushed to the limit. This was a kill move that could pierce even Leman Russ's main armor. But Axis only leaned back, lifted his foot, and snapped it into Dorn's wrist like a viper. Crack! The servo in Dorn's gauntlet jammed. His fist froze. "Heh! You're slow and full of openings," Axis said, smiling. The sole of a golden boot filled Dorn's vision, then an overhead kick rocketed him backward. The impact left a clear footprint dented in his breastplate. Axis flipped elegantly, tapped Dorn's knee lightly for balance, and drifted backward on feathered feet. His whole manner was fluid and calm, utterly unlike the brutish brawling Dorn expected. Horus watched, pupils tight. Every time Dorn tried to counter, Axis's toes would find the precise joint or seam Dorn relied on, interrupting the attack as if predicting it. This was no fair fight. It was a carefully orchestrated humiliation. Dorn wound up a punch that should have pulverized adamantium and even shaken a Titan's foot. Axis merely turned, touched the ground, and slid half an inch like a ghost. The punch only ruffled his hair. Dorn switched tactics, sweeping with his other arm while firing his thrusters to close distance, trying to trap Axis. Axis leaped, his right foot landing on Dorn's sweeping wrist to use it as a fulcrum for a somersault. His left leg snapped forward like a steel whip and bit into Dorn's helmet. A footprint dented the side plate. Dorn staggered back looking ridiculous. "Bastard!" Dorn roared, switching to assault charge. Blue flames flared. His gauntlet generators flared with dazzling electrical light. Axis smiled and met him by lightly hopping up. His heel came down like an axe. When heel struck gauntlet, the adamantium knuckle guards spidered with cracks. Axis planted his foot on Dorn's bionic fist, pinning the arm to the decking. The composite floor cracked in radiating fissures, reaching to Horus's boots. Dorn's breath came heavy. He had never met an opponent like this. This wasn't a duel. It was one-sided crushing. Axis's power was in a different league. The gap felt like that between a Primarch and a Space Marine. What kind of monster could be this strong? Elsewhere on Holy Terra, the Emperor and Micardo sat in the Imperial Palace with cups of coffee. With that Axis personality, he'll probably give Dorn a proper lesson, Micardo said. "You sure that won't discourage him?" "All Geneseed Primarchs answer to me, but their pride is too stubborn. It's sometimes necessary to humble them," the Emperor replied. "Dorn will overcome it. He's like bedrock." Micardo chuckled. "That Axis kid is prouder still. Find someone to teach him a lesson?" "He has the right to be proud," the Emperor said. "Truly, none in the Imperium can rein him in." They laughed. Dorn was about to get stomped. Axis delivered the final sequence with balletic cruelty. He leaped into a handstand above Dorn, legs scissoring around the Primarch's neck, then used the momentum to drive Dorn face-first into the deck. The impact shattered upper sections of Dorn's power armor. He coughed blood and lay embedded in the ground. All the while, Axis had kept his hands clasped behind his back. When the dust cleared, he squatted beside the ruined Primarch and asked, a trace of amusement in his voice, "Can you still stand?" Dorn's face was swollen and bruised beyond recognition, utterly disheveled. "Enough, Axis. You've gone too far." Horus strode over, indignant, and stood in front of Dorn. It had been nothing less than a crushing, deliberate humiliation. Axis smiled, placed a hand on Dorn, and circulated a pulse of life energy, beginning to heal him. Within moments, Dorn, the man whose face had looked like a slaughtered boar, was patched up and sitting up again, furious but alive. Chapter 151, Dorn and Horus, struck and stunned, gained Super Saiyan power. After so many years, Axis's manipulation of Chi, the life energy that permeated the world, had reached an astonishingly refined level. Whether he used it to heal his own wounds or to restore others, he handled it with consummate skill. The injuries Rogol Dorn had just suffered looked severe, but they were only surface damage. With a Primarch-level constitution, he could recover fully with a single night's rest. When Dorn slowly opened his eyes, the pain and cuts he'd felt moments before already seemed to be staunched by an unfamiliar power. "This isn't psychic power. What kind of force is this?" Horus asked from the side, surprised. As a Primarch in body and gene, he could still tell whether someone was using psychic might. "It's a power distinct from psychic ability. It belongs to both the physical universe and a spiritual plane. Chi," Axis explained briefly. Although Axis had been active for decades, knowledge of Chi was tightly guarded by the Emperor. Apart from the Space Wolves, the First Legion, the Fifth Legion, and the Thousand Sons of the so-called Magic Pony were the only ones who knew of it. "So your Chi has powerful healing properties," Horus said. "Chi does more than heal," Axis replied. "It has enormous destructive potential as well. If you want to see how destructive, watch the footage of my battle at Zidon." The Emperor had already authorized the Primarch genes, indeed all those with gene seed Primarch lineage, to view Axis's combat recordings. He only hoped they could take the shock. "I don't care about that," Dorn said bluntly. "I want to know how much power you used just now." The battle had been a complete rout, and for him, a humiliation. He needed to know the scale of the gulf between himself and the man before him. "You want to gauge my strength?" Axis said. "I have several transformation states." Axis listed them with a casual air. Partial manifestation of Super Saiyan power, Super Saiyan mimicry, Super Saiyan 1, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Transcended Super Saiyan stacked with Super Saiyan 2. There was a full-power Super Saiyan, which was effectively perfect mastery of Super Saiyan 1, and thus not considered a separate transformation. He also had a great ape form. Axis had no intention of revealing that one. It was berserk, even compared to the transcended form. "Was it that giant form you used outside? Like ours?" Horus asked. When Axis first appeared outside, his body had swelled to a giant roughly 3.5 meters tall. Once they were inside the Imperial Palace, though, he had shrunk back to a normal Space Marine size. "That's an application of Ki," Axis said. "It can make my muscles and bones surge, increasing my height and weight. Strength goes up, but speed tends to fall." "Show us," Dorn said, standing. Axis's body flared with a golden light. His hair rose and shifted to a brilliant gold. "This is your Legion's transformation," Dorn muttered, realizing what he was witnessing. Data on Axis's gene seed offspring had hinted that the transformation could multiply strength 2 to 5 times, and at its peak could briefly rival a custodian. It was already a terrifying and abnormal skill, one that could allow Axis's Legion to utterly crush others. Dorn's face tightened. His opponent hadn't even shown his true power and was already so far beyond him. "In this state, my strength increases more than 50-fold, Axis revealed. "The difference between me and my gene seed offspring is about 10-fold. I am different. Their bodies cannot withstand the amplification of my gene seed as mine can." His tone made the two Primarch-level men blanch. 50 times? Even the usually controlled Horus swore under his breath. A 50-fold increase in force was obscene. For a human punch force measured in hundreds of kilograms, multiplied by 50, and you were talking about tons of crushing power, enough to annihilate a space marine, an Axis amplified 50-fold was beyond comprehension. "That's just the first form," Axis continued. "I also have a muscle stimulation mode that enhances muscle fibers for even greater strength and speed. There's a full muscle burst variant, but it's similar. Strength rises and relative speed falls. The speed decreases only when compared to opponents of the same strength. At maximum muscle enhancement, I am still supersonic. This is Super Saiyan 1. Next comes an even stronger form." Axis roared. and the Imperial Palace shook. Above Terra, the sky dimmed as dark clouds gathered. Lightning cracked across the heavens. Residents of Holy Terra thought a massive earthquake had struck and dropped to their knees to pray to the Emperor for protection. The Emperor and Micardo, drinking coffee nearby, exchanged wry smiles. Axis was about to crush the pride of these two Primarchs. "This form multiplies my strength 100 times, Axis declared. "It's twice as strong as Super Saiyan 1. I've only just mastered it, so I can't contain the aura precisely yet. The change is a bit noisy." 100 times? Dorn's voice wavered. The gap between himself and Axis, 100-fold, was a number that tasted like despair. A mortal given a 100-fold boost could stand at custodian levels, a punch force in the tens of tons. Even the strongest trained human would find such power almost unfathomable. "Is that your limit, Axis? With that, you could rival Father, couldn't you?" Horus asked, voice trembling. In their understanding, the Emperor was only slightly stronger than a Primarch, certainly not 100 times stronger. "Let me correct you," Axis said. "This state is not enough to rival the Emperor. The Emperor is far more powerful than you imagine. My current strength cannot defeat him." He shook his head. "This state can't even force out a fraction of Huang Laohan's Black King power. Only transcended Super Saiyan stacked with Super Saiyan 2 would be comparable." Horus's and Dorn's faces darkened. Axis went on, "And no, you shouldn't assume this is my full power. I have other transformations, including a legendary form I won't show you. It's far stronger than these. Even so, stacked forms aside, I still lost to the Emperor." Horus's thoughts churned. Earlier, on the plaza of Holy Terra, the Emperor had once displayed his psychic might, the crushing presence that nearly overwhelmed all around him. Recalling that, Horus realized that if the Emperor had truly wished, he could have ended Horus in an instant. For 30 years, Horus had been at his father's side, fighting alongside him. The Emperor had always seemed only slightly stronger. Now the scale of the difference revealed itself. His father had been holding back. The Emperor had saved him many times without ever seeming to need rescuing at all. Was it all a performance the Emperor had put on? Horus felt betrayed and unsettled. Dorn was less volatile, but equally chastened. He accepted the reality in grim silence. "Hasty to go," Axis called to Horus, who had stepped back as if to leave. "I told you I could increase your strength. Chi is not only destructive and healing, it can also strengthen another's physique. That task was assigned to me by the Emperor." Axis sounded almost apologetic. Horus looked conflicted. The Emperor's true might had only become plain after Horus himself had launched the Great Heresy. The old man had hidden his full strength. Even in the era of the Golden Throne, the Emperor's reserves were beyond imagination. "You mean you can use Chi to raise our physical constitutions?" Horus asked. "Yes, Lionel Johnson and Leman Russ have already been enhanced by my Chi. After I strengthen you two, I will work on the Emperor's physique while I remain on Holy Terra." Axis suggested that, during his stay, the Emperor might recall the remaining Primarchs one by one so they could be strengthened. "I understand. What must we do to cooperate?" Dorn asked. "Can this Chi be taught to us? Can we learn to control it ourselves?" Horus demanded. If Chi was the source of Axis's outrageous power, if it was the reason he could push beyond Primarch limits, could Horus and Dorn learn it and even use it to challenge their father? Axis hesitated. "I've tried long ago. The power is unique to me. At most, I can use Chi to reinforce your bodies, but no one else in the universe can wield Chi like I do." Inwardly, Axis had other motives. He wanted someone close to Horus, a cultivated gene seed offspring who could keep watch on the War Master's future. Not on Holy Terra, but at a later opportunity, he would find the chance. As for Dorn, he knew the Lord could not accept Psychers easily, let alone a cultivator. "I understand. Come on, Axis, I want my strength increased too," Horus said, recovering his composure. With the matter settled, Axis began to channel his Super Saiyan Chi into the two Primarch-level men. Compared to the raw, tempestuous aura of a legendary Super Saiyan, the regular Super Saiyan's Chi was calmer and more balanced, far more suitable for Terran bodies, and its strengthening effect surpassed that of the transcended Chi for this purpose. As Axis worked, the two felt strange currents of life energy threading through them, reshaping muscle, bone, and endurance, amplifying what they already were. The air hummed with potential. The Emperor watched, Mikado at his side, both smiling with a strange mixture of pride and apprehension. Axis's power had revealed not only his own limits, but, more importantly, the scale at which humanity might still grow. Chapter 152, The True Emperor. My name is Neos. Golden Super Saiyan Chi energy surged from Axis's body as he placed his hands on the shoulders of the two gene seed Primarchs, slowly channeling it into them. The instant his palms touched, the dazzling gold energy flowed like a living thing. Horus and Rogel Dorn stiffened. They felt a power unlike anything before entering their bodies, seeping into every cell. Their cells, like parched travelers finding water, drank it greedily. Their whole bodies came alive. "Relax and feel this power," Axis said, golden flames flickering in his pupils as the Super Saiyan Chi continued to suffuse the two Primarchs. Horus's pupils tightened as he watched veins along his arms glow with gold, the Chi coursing through him. His blood vessels, pulse, muscle fibers were strengthening. His bone density crept upward in a way he could sense. A body that had already been pushed to its limits, the pinnacle of human form, was getting stronger still. The Primarchs had been augmented by the Emperor with technology and warp techniques to the peak of humanity. Their gene templates came from the Emperor himself. Physically, they had been as strong as he was, only the Emperor surpassed them in psychic might. But this new power shattered that limit. Even those godlike bodies still had room to grow. Just the first day of enhancement brought tangible changes. Horus looked at Axis with fresh awe. No wonder the Emperor had chosen him to be a new gene seed Primarch. Axis truly had the qualifications. He'd gladly accept this brother-in-law. "All right, come back at the same time tomorrow," Axis said. "To integrate the Chi fully with your bodies and get the maximum gain, you both need to be beaten half to death by me." He had no intention of wasting such fine practice dummies. Though they couldn't best him, they were perfect for testing his punches. And he wasn't lying. Exhausting their bodies completely after a fight made them absorb Chi far more efficiently. Axis had discovered this effect while strengthening his gene seed offspring. Their exhausted cells took the Chi more readily. Rogel Dorn gritted his teeth but accepted it as tempering. Fighting a stronger opponent could only make him better. Horus, in that instant, felt whatever goodwill he'd had toward Axis vanish. That scoundrel just wanted to beat him and Dorn senseless. The next days were a hell and heaven routine. Every morning, Axis dragged them to the training grounds and put them through brutal sessions. Screams echoed from the underground arena. For the first time since birth, the two Primarchs felt fear and the sting of failure. After a harsh warm-up, Axis would use potent life ki to heal them, then pour in Super Saiyan Chi to strengthen them. At times, the recovery felt like paradise. After relentless exertion, they'd lie as if on a sunlit shore or in a forest bathing in natural chi, as if returning to a mother's embrace. Beyond the euphoric sensation, their bodies kept growing stronger at an almost visible rate. 2 months later, their physical condition had improved by roughly 40%. Every aspect of their physicality had been sharpened, making them even more formidable. During this period, Axis also took the time to hold a wedding with Kasha. The Emperor himself attended, along with the two gene seed Primarchs, Chancellor Mikado, and a handful of high imperial nobles. The ceremony was simple, more a formality than anything. For beings near immortal, ritual mattered little, its value lay elsewhere. With the marriage, the Empire not only gained a grand princess, the Emperor gained a daughter, and all the Primarchs gained a sister. And a new gene seed Primarch had returned to the Empire. To ordinary citizens, a new Primarch's return wasn't particularly extraordinary. Every few years another would appear and be welcomed back. But the other Primarchs reacted differently when they learned Axis's identity. Those who had already met Axis, Lionel Johnson, Carl Chagatai Khan, Leman Russ, Magnus, and a few others, knew of him under a strict gag order. The rest were stunned to learn the truth. Axis was not the Emperor's born child. He was the result of an experimental childhood gene seed modification. That implied the Emperor possessed a way to turn ordinary people into Primarchs, a thought that shook them. Horus, the Primarch of the 16th Legion, addressed the Empire to calm fears. Axis was a unique case. Another like him would not be produced. Once reassured, the remaining Primarchs relaxed and sent Psyker-born congratulations to Holy Terra. They congratulated Axis on his Primarch status and blessed their new sister, Kasha. Even Mortarion, grim and taciturn, offered sincere blessings. In truth, many of the Primarchs had longed for a sisterly presence. After 2 months of enhancement, Horus and Rogel Dorn took their leave of Axis, Kasha, and the Emperor, boarding their ships and resuming the Great Crusade. Once they departed, Axis moved on to a more important task, strengthening the Emperor's body. The Emperor's body was stronger than that of a normal Primarch, so to enhance him, Axis had to shift to Super Saiyan full power. The father-in-law and son-in-law retired to a private chamber deep within Terra's imperial palace. The Emperor's form flashed, shrinking from a golden giant of over 4 meters into a middle-aged man just under 2 meters tall. "Surprised, aren't you, Axis? This is my true face. Only Erda, Kasha, and Micardo knew. Now you are added to that list," the Emperor said. He had been born to human parents. He was fundamentally human. The towering golden figure had been a psychic disguise. This ordinary human form was his real appearance. "It's a surprise, but you look much better like this," Axis said. From some accounts, those of the Sisters of Silence, after the Emperor took the golden throne, he was not the shining giant, but a middle-aged man, racked with agony. The strongest soul blind could pierce the psychic mask and see the truth. "I kept the taller image to reassure the Primarchs, to make them feel they weren't monsters I'd created," the Emperor said. "I understand. I do the same when I appear publicly. A 3-meter figure is more intimidating than a middle-aged man," Axis replied with a wry smile. "You have a sense of humor, young man. My true name is Neos. That was the name I was given at birth, the first name I used. You married Kasha. You are family. You have the right to know my true name. Titles like Lord of Mankind or Emperor are only aliases," the Emperor said, entrusting Axis with a secret even some Primarchs did not share. "Actually, calling you father-in-law is fine too. In my home custom, using your given name directly would be disrespectful," Axis answered. The Emperor leaned closer. Axis's knowledge of Neos's true form and name marked him as exceptionally close, privilege even the Primarchs lacked. If Horus found out, would he be jealous? Perhaps he might never be shown the Emperor's real face. "As you wish," Neos said. "Do you need me to prepare anything?" "No. Relax. Retract your psychic power." "Don't resist my energy," Axis replied. The Emperor nodded, sat cross-legged before Axis, and suppressed his psychic presence to the lowest ebb. The two pressed their palms together, and Axis began to infuse Neos's body with Super Saiyan Chi. Chapter 153. Almost sucked dry, the Emperor's body evolved. Axis drew a deep breath, and a torrent of golden chi erupted from him as he slipped into Super Saiyan full power. His pupils flashed gold, his hair flared up like burning flames, but the real change was the control. The aura was fierce yet contained, a sign of perfect mastery. "We'll begin," Axis said in a low voice. The moment his palms touched the Emperor's, the secret chamber was flooded with gilded light. This wasn't the gentle permeation used to strengthen a gene seed Primarch. It was a deluge. The Emperor's body swallowed the Super Saiyan Chi like a bottomless pit. His rate of absorption surprised Axis. Though born human, the Emperor's physiology was nothing like an ordinary person's. Something extraordinary happened. His whole body flushed gold, and he greedily drank in Axis's chi. "Continue," the Emperor's voice sounded younger, and Axis watched as old scar tissue and ancient injuries visibly re-knit. The corrosion left by the Star God and the Void Dragon, warped trauma from aeons of war, even damage inflicted by the Chaos Four Gods, the Chi repaired each in turn. His body was changing on a scale Axis had never seen. The Emperor felt better than he had in centuries. Axis's Chi, which bolstered Gene Seed Primarchs, could bolster the Emperor too, and it was also healing those hidden wounds. It was an unexpected, extraordinary bonus. The most astonishing changes were at the cellular level. Through his perception of Chi, Axis saw the Emperor's body undergoing an incredible reordering. The absorption rate exceeded his expectations. Within hours, Axis's Chi was nearly drained. He nearly choked at the thought. Without even resorting to further transformations, just a fraction of his power in full power state had been enough to strengthen 2 Primarchs, yet it was being devoured here. "Damn you, Huang Lao Han," Axis muttered inwardly. "If you're not a god, I'll eat my hat. I'm a legendary Super Saiyan. You almost sucked me dry." Golden light flared from Axis. His chi surged like a jet. His hair bristled with electricity. Let's see how much more you can take. He ascended to Super Saiyan 2. An ordinary Super Saiyan, even ascending to Stage 3, might have collapsed under the Emperor's absorption. But Axis was legendary. His chi regenerated continuously. Axis, my body is different from other Primarchs. If you can't handle it, tell me, the Emperor said. He sounded cautious. His body's appetite truly was enormous. Every cell greedily drank in life force. This vitality was crucial to him. His cells were activating like tiny stellar particles, more alive than they had ever been. Don't worry, this is only Super Saiyan 2. If needed, I still have Super Saiyan, and beyond that, Axis said confidently. Don't underestimate a legendary Super Saiyan. His reserves were vast. Do not switch into a stacked Super Saiyan state, the Emperor warned. It will raise combat power, but it won't increase total chi. That mode is for fighting. For this kind of infusion, Super Saiyan full power is actually better. The Emperor preferred a calmer, more peaceful chi to be absorbed. Axis nodded and held back from further transformation. Even without changing form, a steady stream of chi issued from him, and finally, the Emperor's absorption rate balanced delicately with Axis's output. Hours slipped by. More than a dozen passed in the blink of an eye. Axis was soaked in sweat. The Emperor had become a bottomless universe, every cell like a black hole, greedily devouring the golden chi. Axis felt reality bending around the Lord of Mankind, a transformation that seemed to transcend physical law. Your cells are evolving? Axis whispered. Astonished, he sensed the Emperor's gene chain reorganizing. Sections corrupted by the warp were healing. Beyond repair, the Emperor's DNA was evolving toward a more perfect form. You're the true protagonist, aren't you, Huang Laohan? Axis thought. Your body is evolving. He could feel the Emperor breaking through shackles. Muscle density increased, bone structure optimized, the overall strength of his body climbed at an insane rate. If the Emperor had once been the pinnacle of humanity, he was now stepping into something beyond human, utterly and completely. So that's it? The Emperor's voice trembled with shock. I always thought my body had reached the limits of humanity, but I was wrong. Axis, my cells have been evolving toward a higher plane since my birth. I started as an ordinary body and slowly adapted to my soul. That process stalled thousands of years ago. Back then, even the most advanced human science couldn't push me further. But your chi has started a new phase of evolution. It will take time, but the effects will be profound. The improvement in his physical constitution would amplify his psychic power too. The benefits Axis provided were immense. I don't think evolution happens overnight. Can we take a break? Axis coughed. His chi was empty, utterly exhausted. Ha! Draining your chi is good for you too. Cells strengthen under stress. Let's stop for today. Rest. Eat in 24 hours. Recover fully and then we'll continue, the Emperor said, renewed vigor in his voice. He felt reborn, powerful and full of energy. You're right, Axis replied as he returned to his normal state. Exhausting my chi and letting it regenerate strengthens it. This is an interesting way to cultivate. Only Huang Laohan could reduce a Super Saiyan to 0. The old man's body was a bottomless pit, each cell a greedy maw. The Emperor moved his limbs and tested them. He felt like a newborn. You go first. I want to familiarize myself with these changes, he said. Axis nodded and began to leave, but he glanced back. Through his psychic sight, a brilliant golden aura now enveloped the Emperor, growing brighter by the moment. A chill of realization passed through him. He had perhaps opened a Pandora's box. What would a strengthened Emperor mean for the universe? An even more terrifying Huang Laohan might arise, diverging wildly from the original timeline. Outside the underground chamber, Axis stretched and returned to his residence. The custodes had prepared a feast for him, 500 servings. He devoured them quickly, then ordered another 1,000 portions. Even that only barely sated the hunger born of depleting and regenerating his chi. His appetite had tripled, even quadrupled compared to before. He slept 12 hours straight to restore his energy. After waking, he went to the underground training grounds and ran through warm-ups. The cycle of emptying his chi and letting it recover seemed to have increased his baseline. Strengthening Huang Laohan had become a form of cultivation for Axis too. The Emperor's body was abnormal and terrifying, but Axis, a Saiyan, was not weak. A stronger emperor was good. It meant a rival worth training against. Bullying fodder had grown tedious. Axis resumed solitary training in the room. The emperor was progressing. Axis couldn't afford to lag. In the following days, Axis settled into a strict routine, 10 hours each day devoted to strengthening the emperor, followed by 24 hours of rest to recover chi and stamina. He also found time to check on his gene seed offspring. The scout ship sent to probe the space Necrons had returned. Axis did not yet unseal the time Necron to convert into a super machine spirit. Many things were delicate on Holy Terra, and he wasn't in a rush. Matter and the space wolves aboard the vessel, once back on Terra, received new gene seed implants and became Axis's gene seed offspring. They gained a weakened Super Saiyan transformation. Matter himself, already a potent psyker, saw his psychic power swell when transformed, terrifying in its own right, but he still couldn't match Kasha. Kasha's body and soul were also being nourished by chi. Her strength even exceeded Mikado, the Imperial Regent. She had become, in practice, the third strongest psyker in the Empire, behind only the Emperor and Magnus. While the Emperor grew stronger, Axis did too. A Saiyan thrived on burning himself out and starting over. Giving all his ki for the Emperor to absorb and then rebuilding it was perfect training. As the Emperor's capacity increased, so did Axis's reserves. In the first year, the Emperor still drained him completely, leaving Axis needing a full day to recover. By year 2, Axis could hold a little ki back and even let the Emperor take more. After resting, he could spare a wave of strengthening for Kasha. In the third year, Axis's ki had roughly doubled, and the Emperor's daily intake had more than doubled as well. Now Axis only needed a meal and 7 or 8 hours sleep to recover. His body was adapting to the extreme cycle of consumption and replenishment. Besides empowering Kasha and his gene seed offspring, Axis was asked to help the custodes. Your gene seed offspring can be improved later, the Emperor said. Help me with the custodes first. From the 4th year, Axis spent hours a day strengthening the custodes. Even Mikado underwent reinforcement. By the 5th year, Axis's ki had increased by another 1.5 times, and his Super Saiyan 2 training had reached its limit. At the Emperor's command, the Mars Mechanicum carved out a gravity chamber deep beneath the Imperial Palace, about 300 times normal gravity, for Axis. Once finished, Axis transmitted all the data to the Morning Star and ordered an identical chamber fitted on his flagship. Future training would matter. By the 6th year, the Emperor's physical evolution hit a critical phase. His daily ki needs were now more than triple what they had been in year 1. The original plan had the Emperor remain on Holy Terra only half a year before resuming command of the Great Crusade, but Axis's arrival had altered that. The Emperor's body had to evolve, and so he stayed on Terra. Command of the Crusade was handed to Horus in advance. In the 7th year, Axis's first modified batch of gene seed recruits was complete, and his Legion headcount finally surpassed 30,000. Remarkable progress, given that Astartes modification typically takes 6 to 10 years. From then on, 30,000 new recruits would join Axis's ranks every year until his Legion reached 100,000 by the 10th year. By the 8th year, the second Primarch Karl returned to Holy Terra. Karl, once rescued and later expanded his Legion to over 100,000, officially rejoined the Great Crusade. Axis and Karl conversed amicably. Axis even used his ki to strengthen the second Primarch's body. "What a miraculous power," Karl said after the reinforcement. "I thought Father was held back by something, but he's been strengthening himself like this." The realization made sense of Horus, Leman Russ, and the Lion's dramatic increases in strength. Had Karl possessed this condition during the Raiden conflict, he thought, he might never have been ambushed so disastrously. "My Legion will be ready to join the Crusade within 3 years at most," Axis told him. The first modified recruits had enlisted, and the Legion already exceeded 35,000. The Emperor would henceforth leave Axis to run the Legion's development himself. Axis would need to find a homeworld during the Crusade. That would be part of his task. "Father will return to lead us in battle in 3 years?" Karl asked, eyes bright. "Probably around then," Axis replied. "It could be sooner or later. The Emperor's at a critical point. Is Horus doing well leading the Crusade?" Horus was effectively acting as War Master already, though the title had not been formalized. Carl sighed. Horus had natural leadership, and many Primarchs were willing to follow him, except one. Let me guess. Lionel Johnson, Axis said. Exactly, Carl said. Lion's Legion doesn't take Horus's orders reliably. In major campaigns, he'll cooperate, but for smaller directives, he follows his own counsel. It's messy, but none of our business. He shrugged. The original timeline had Lionel Johnson still locked in mortal combat with the Raiden, but Axis's early arrival had changed things. Now 2 claims to leadership were developing, Lion as the eldest Primarch by birthright, and Horus as the first to return and act as commander. Conflict between them seemed inevitable. Each wanted to be the leader. Both Lion and Horus are likely recruiting allies, Carl warned. They'll both try to court you. Think carefully when you join the crusade. Axis asked whether any Primarchs had openly taken sides. No one has declared yet, but Horus has the advantage. Sanguinius and Mortarion are close to Horus and will stand with him. Magnus, Chagatai Khan, Fulgrim, Ferris, Perturabo, Leman Russ, Vulcan, Old 11, Gilman and I, most of us have good relations with Horus. It was almost one-sided. Lion had few supporters. Only Rogel Dorn and Lorgar stayed neutral. Dorn was rock-steady. He cared only for the Empire and the Emperor. Lorgar was obsessed with proselytizing and had fallen far behind in the Crusade. After 7 years, he had conquered fewer than 10 worlds. This is complicated, Axis said. I won't take sides. Carl's warning was a gentle nudge, but Axis, being a Scion, was blunt and direct. He didn't need politics. He needed to fight. Kasha agreed. Don't get involved, she sighed. Your job is to build your legion and use Ki to help the Emperor. Political power is in Makardo's hands. Military command in Horus's. If Lion won't obey orders, that's on him. Makardo will report everything to Father anyway. In the 9th year, the Imperial Expeditionary Fleet discovered another Primarch. The Emperor left Holy Terra for half a year to receive Conrad Kurz. The Night Lords were formed, Nostromo becoming their homeworld. While the Emperor was abroad, he summoned Horus and Lion together and rebuked them both. He told Horus to respect his brothers and warned Lion that, as eldest, he must set an example and obey the War Master's directives. The storm over leadership subsided, but the Primarchs now believed the Emperor's likely choice of successor was Horus. Lion went away discouraged. The Emperor also sent an envoy to the 17th Legion at Colchis to order Lorgar to hurry his crusade efforts. After finishing these matters, he returned to Holy Terra to continue receiving Axis's Ki strengthening. Both men estimated another year or 2 would be needed to complete the purification work. 10 years had passed. In the 10th year, Axis finished reinforcing the Custodes' 10,000-man regiment, improving their physical qualities by roughly 20 to 30%. Axis's legion officially passed the 100,000 mark. The Golden Legion had been formed. That year, the Emperor's evolution finally concluded. In the secret chamber beneath the Imperial Palace, the culmination came. Boom, the chamber trembled. The Emperor's body lifted slowly as a brilliant halo of golden energy bloomed around him. His hair floated without breeze. Golden patterns spread across his skin. He opened his eyes, and twin golden beams shot out from his pupils. An unprecedented psychic wave burst from him, more powerful than any before. I feel excellent, Axis. My physical qualities have increased at least 3-fold, the Emperor said, standing before Axis. Over a decade, his body had absorbed Axis's Ki extensively and evolved into something far more potent. Axis himself remained the greater monstrosity. His growth over 10 years had been enormous as well. Thank you, Axis, the Emperor continued. You have not only healed my old wounds, but allowed my body to evolve. You're welcome. It's training for me, too, Axis replied. Axis, your strength must have increased significantly as well, the Emperor observed. He sensed a boundless potential in the boy, perhaps even a new transformation, something that might yet redefine the balance between them. Chapter 155, Super Saiyan 3, Emperor, Fall. Ha ha ha! You guessed right. I've already mastered a new Super Saiyan form, Super Saiyan 3. It's 400 times my base strength. Father-in-law, when are we going to fight again? Axis laughed. He had reached Super Saiyan 3. Son Goku had spent 7 years in the underworld chasing and trying to understand SS3 without a clear breakthrough. Axis's conditions had been far better. He'd trained in a gravity chamber, sparred against squads of golden corn cobs and gene seed primarchs, and for the last 10 years, he'd pushed himself relentlessly. Besides strengthening the custodes with his chi, Axis made a habit of challenging thousands of custodes to one-on-one fights, ostensibly to train them, but in reality to push his own body to the limit. The Emperor's role in those drills had been even harsher. Each time he fully exhausted Axis's chi, then let him recover and start again. Axis had the Super Saiyan aptitude to begin with, and the Emperor had fitted him with biological enhancements, a furnace-like organ, a super heart, a super brain. With all that, if Axis couldn't crack SS3 after 10 years, he might as well have been smashing his head against a block of tofu. A year ago, Axis had only just tasted Super Saiyan 3 in the training room. He then spent another year stabilizing and mastering it. In the form, he was now 400 times his baseline, 4 times the power of SS2, but the transformation shredded stamina. Even as a legendary Super Saiyan, he couldn't hold SS3 for long. From SS3 onward, Axis had to advance on his own. Son Goku's methods could no longer carry him. Forget it. A fight between you and me would cause major complications. I need to get back to the Great Crusade, the Emperor said, shaking his head. The crusade had been delayed for 10 years because of this. He needed to return to the front. Moreover, Axis's recent chi strengthening had revealed something serious to him. Father-in-law, what's wrong? You look troubled, Axis said, noticing the Emperor's face tighten. Those words silenced the Emperor. He didn't know how to put it. Finally, he sighed. Axis, if one day you had to be my enemy, if you were ever forced to utterly destroy me, could you do it? The question stunned Axis. If you mean sparring, I'd love it. I'd be thrilled, but I won't kill you. Like you said before, you're Kasha's father, I'm Kasha's husband, we're family. I won't strike you. He said it firmly. What on earth was Huang Laohan doing? Was he testing him, seeing whether Axis might be corrupted by chaos and turn against humanity or the Emperor? Axis rejected the idea outright. He had no desire to join chaos. That cesspit of corruption was not for him. I want to see your new form, the Emperor said. All right, Axis replied, but SS3's aura is extreme. We should reinforce this place first. When Axis had tried SS3 in the training grounds before, he'd brought Kasha and Mater and erected a powerful psychic power barrier to stop the aura from leaking out. The Emperor's eyes flashed golden. No problem. My psychic power can even isolate space and time here. Transform. No matter how strong your aura, it won't get out. He cast a barrier over the underground chamber, absolute, impenetrable. The Emperor's personally woven psychic barrier isolated even the surrounding space. Not a trace of Axis's power could escape. Axis nodded, inhaled, and a golden aura burst from him. His black hair snapped upright and flashed gold. Lightning danced around him. SS2 at first, but he did not stop. Ha! He roared, pouring energy deeper. The golden storm swept the chamber. His hair erupted that much further, running down to his waist. His eyebrows vanished, his brow grew more pronounced, and his pupils sharpened into a deadly gleam. His whole expression went feral. Any mortal glancing into his eyes would freeze from the sheer intensity. Violent energy roared through the secret chamber. If not for the Emperor's barrier, Terra itself would have felt the world-shattering power. This is Super Saiyan 3. Axis's voice deepened, resonant. Lightning crackled denser than in SS2, and the storm of power threatened to tear space apart. He clenched his fists and felt the surge, 400 times baseline, enough force to tear a supergiant apart. This wasn't merely igniting a star's core, it was absolute power capable of detonating a star. The Emperor watched in silence as Axis transformed, his barrier holding firm. His gaze was deep, contemplative. Father-in-law, what do you think? Axis grinned, battle lust in his eyes. Want to try me now? No. The Emperor shook his head. No, that won't do. Axis, your strength has increased even more than I expected. There are things I should tell you, things you must never speak of. Not to the Gene Seed Primarchs, not to Kasha, not to Micardo. Promise me. Axis nodded, then let SS3 fade. My question earlier wasn't a test, the Emperor said, breathing heavily. It was a prophecy. I saw the future. Prophecy? Axis frowned. What did you see? I will fall. The Emperor's tone was helpless. Axis's pupils narrowed. Fall? Father-in-law, are you joking? You'll fall? Huang Laohan's answer chilled him. If the Emperor fell, which of the Chaos Gods would dare take him? He'd be their equal, and worse. Axis's mind flashed to darker lore, the Dark King. In recent stories, the Dark King was a being more terrible than the four Chaos Gods, a universe-devouring entity that would plunge everything into silent darkness. If certain conditions are met, the Emperor continued, I will become something more terrifying than the four. Humanity will be hopeless. Do you know the ancient Eldar myths? I know them. Asurion, the Phoenix King, the Eldar gods, Axis said. Makardo taught me that. Slaanesh was born from the Eldar's fall. The moment Slaanesh came into being, over 99% of the Eldar had their souls devoured. Only 3 of their gods survived. One shattered into shards, one became a prisoner, one hid forever in the webway. Humans are weaker than the Eldar psychically, but our numbers are greater. That makes us dangerous in a different way. Are you saying humans might birth a new Chaos God? Axis asked. Worse, the Emperor said. I am the monster born of humanity. The Dark King slumbers within me. When the Dark King is born, every human's life and soul will be devoured the moment of his birth. The entire human race will be erased. Axis remembered the effect his chi strengthening had on the Emperor. Bones and body reinforced, psychic power amplified. The vision the Emperor had seen now read clearer. He would become a husk, cling to the golden throne in endless torment, kept alive by whatever was left of human energy. When his last scrap of humanity and love for mankind vanished, the Dark King would rise, and the universe would die in darkness. Axis, the Emperor said, the chi you gave me could have strengthened my body tenfold. I chose to use only threefold. Do you know why? Axis shook his head. I am preserving strength for that inevitable future. Your chi can delay the Dark King's birth. Axis, in that despairing future I saw, you are the only hope. I will accept that cruel fate, sit on the golden throne, and buy you time. The Emperor placed his hands on Axis's shoulders. You're going to sit on the golden throne? Axis's voice was a gasp. Wait, what did you mean when you said you have to sit on the golden throne? Axis asked. Did the future you saw show you sitting on it? The golden throne, the Emperor said. I saw myself sitting on it and becoming a dried, mummified thing. Then why not simply avoid sitting on it? Axis asked. The Emperor gave a bitter smile. If only it were that simple. Psyker's visions of the future are almost immutable, and what he had seen beyond that throne was even darker, an absolute, all-consuming despair. It isn't as simple as you think, Axis, the Emperor replied. Although I saw myself on the throne, I did not see the exact sequence of events that led there, but it appears tied to the Great Heresy. I saw at least half of the Gene Seed Primarchs betray me. Even if he could stop the heresy, he would still be forced to sit upon the throne. Otherwise, the Dark King would be born sooner and with greater power. The Emperor had long known that roughly half of the Primarchs would turn traitor. In some ways, this vision confirmed that old prophecy, or the curse of the 4 Chaos Gods. You could destroy the Golden Throne now, Axis offered. Then you couldn't sit on it. If there's going to be a great heresy, why not prevent it outright? If it were that simple, I would order its destruction this instant, the Emperor said. But the throne is tied to the Webway project and to the future of humanity itself. Destroying it would trigger a far worse catastrophe. If I sit on it, the Dark King will not fully be born for more than 10,000 years. If I refuse the throne, the Dark King will be born within a few hundred years. He looked as if he had been stripped down to bone. The image of his mummified, tortured self had driven him nearly to the edge. Part of him had wanted to wrench free the Dark King and smash everything. He could not bear the thought of becoming that thing. Yet he had felt utterly helpless in the face of fate. The Dark King was paradoxical. Born in the future, yet already threaded into the timeline like Slaanesh. Its influence had reached back through time, from cults and shamans to the shaping of humanity and the Emperor's own immortality. If the Emperor refused the script of its birth, the Dark King would tear apart his personality and erupt forth. Its delay in being born was not mercy, but a cruel calculation. It would be allowed to grow into its most perfect form. I understand, Axis said. One day I will defeat the Dark King. I'll save you. If he can destroy the universe, then I will go beyond this universe. He grinned, half in jest and half in defiance. If Super Saiyan 3 isn't enough, he said to himself, then Super Saiyan 4, Super Saiyan God, Super Blue, and if necessary, mastery of ultra instinct. The Emperor's expression softened faintly. That fighting spirit will serve you well. In the future, there will be an enemy that requires everything you can give, even the destruction of whole worlds. Axis's earlier aim had been petty by comparison, to beat up the Chaos Four. Now he had a far larger target. It's good that you have confidence, the Emperor continued. In the future, I saw that more than half the Primarchs would betray me, and I could make out a few of them. I intend to remove some of them before they turn. Who did you see, father-in-law? Axis asked. The thought hit Axis harder than he expected. Not Horus? Not Magnus? After all the trouble Magic Pony had caused, would he still be swayed by Tzeentch and blow up the webway? In the vision, I saw 9 blurred figures I could not identify, the Emperor said. But one was unmistakable. A man riven with madness, bloodthirsty, with iron nails driven into his skull. Behind him stood the 12th Legion, the Warhounds. He is the 12th Geneseed Primarch, one I have not yet found. That was the only clear traitor the Emperor could confirm. The rest remained indistinct. But the one he did see was enough. It was Angron, a tragic, doomed figure, and the Emperor's face darkened with the knowledge of the slaughter he would bring. A memory lingered. When his forces had encountered the slavers on Nuceria, their masters had surrendered. The Emperor could not slaughter those who yielded. He could not simply take Angron by force at that time. And deep down, he had never liked the Primarch. Even in the vision, Angron's first meeting with the Emperor ended in the killing of custodians. Even without outright betrayal, he would have slaughtered his own gene children. Axis, the Emperor said. A little over half a month ago, I received word from Micardo. There are reports that a suspected Geneseed Primarch has been discovered on a newly explored Imperial world. I believe this may be the 12th, the one who will betray me and unleash unimaginable carnage. So you want me to go? Axis asked. Precisely. I want you to remove him before he becomes the monster he is destined to be. This Primarch is a failure in every sense. Axis hesitated. Can we try other approaches? Maybe prevent his betrayal instead of killing him outright. Perhaps our interference is what pushes him into treachery. You do not understand, the Emperor said, voice low with a weariness Axis had not heard before. Once a future is seen psychically, it is nearly immutable. I have tried, as you would, to change what I saw. I tried to save my father, to prevent the Void Dragon incident, the human Iron Men uprising, and even the betrayal of the Primarchs. Each attempt failed. That is why, when the second Primarch was controlled by the Raiden, I sent you to remove him. I know the price of hope. That knowledge had hardened the Emperor's decisions. The vision of Angron left no room for mercy. The destruction he would wreak and the demon prince he would become under Khorne's sway were clear. What about the 12th Legion? Axis asked. Do you mean to destroy all of them as well? No, the Emperor said. The 12th are loyal Marines. The fault is with their Primarch. I will gather the 12th and replace their gene seed. You will become their new Primarch. The 12th will become your gene children. Axis's mind raced. The 12th Legion would not be erased but reborn. His legion. Their numbers would swell, and the idea was intoxicating. Khorne, the little Angron, and a vast legion of loyal space marines, all potentially his. You will be given a chance, the Emperor said. Unless it is absolutely necessary, I do not intend to wipe them out. We will, however, perform whatever reconditioning is needed. The 12th must have over 100,000 marines by now, Axis said. My legion would suddenly be one of the largest. I trust you, the Emperor said simply. In the future, I saw you standing at my side. Your gene offspring were loyal. As long as you are with me, even if half the Primarchs turn, it need not be the end. Axis nodded. I understand. I'll prepare to depart at once. The Emperor inclined his head in approval and left the training hall with him, already issuing a chain of orders. One of the first was to gather every member of the 12th Legion. The conversation between Axis and the Emperor had to be kept secret from everyone. Even Micardo, the Emperor's closest confidant, would be kept in the dark. What they spoke of was too cruel to bear. If fate could not be altered and the final plot unfolded, humanity would step by step descend into the deepest abyss of despair. The Emperor envisioned himself split into countless dark and twisted personalities, neither human nor ghost. From that despair, the Dark King would be born, bathed in the blood of mankind. He could not allow it. To stave off that fate, the Emperor retained 80% of Axis's chi within his own body. That potent life energy would help him resist the torment of the Golden Throne. Once enthroned, his soul would enter the warp and feed day and night on humanity's hope to amplify his psychic power. The Emperor estimated that in 10,000 years his power would rival the Chaos Gods, allowing him to birth daemon princes, or even great daemons and legions thereof. Transformed into a holy power, that strength would delay the Dark King's birth and buy Axis and humanity precious time. The 12th Legion, the Warhounds, obeyed the recall without delay. The Warhounds had been a dependable force during the Great Crusade, earning victory and honor through decades of service. Their company captains should never have died inexplicably at Angron's hands, nor should they have been driven mad and branded with the butcher's nails. The Legion's descent into bloodlust would bring catastrophe, but while the Emperor could not change the broad sweep of events, he resolved to adjust smaller currents where he could. Micardo and Kasha were stunned when the Emperor ordered the Warhounds home, but they followed his command without question. The Legion would arrive at Holy Terra in 3 months. During the interim, the Emperor summoned Micardo, as well as Axis and Kasha. "Old friend," he said, looking at Micardo, "you must be wondering why I recalled the 12th, aren't you?" "A little," Micardo admitted. "But you are the Emperor. I support whatever decision you make. Still, may I know the reason?" "You are my oldest and most trusted friend. Axis used chi to strengthen my body. My physical form is more than tripled, and my psychic power has greatly increased. I have begun to see the future." The Emperor spoke plainly. "A glimpse of the future? Neos, what did you see?" Micardo asked, surprised. When alone, Micardo sometimes called the Emperor by his true name. In public, he used titles. "I saw betrayal." The Emperor's tone hardened. "The Primarch of the 12th, our 12th, he will betray me." The Emperor could not speak of the Dark King or the Golden Throne, but he could reveal some of what he had foreseen of the Great Heresy. "What? Are you sure? He will turn traitor?" Micardo's face went pale. "Yes. If you don't believe me, do not resist. I will show you what I saw." The Emperor's eyes flared gold. He reached out with his psychic will and linked himself to Micardo, Kasha, and Axis, letting them share a portion of his vision. They saw Angron on a flagship, howling his fury at the Emperor. He raised his axes and charged, felling a custodian in the assault. The Emperor's psychic might subdued him and sent him back to his legion, but Angron refused to command. He killed captains who came to persuade him. Only when a company captain named Khorne drove the butcher's nails into himself did he win Angron's trust. Thereafter, the 12th unleashed a storm of blood across the stars. Angron ordered conquests to be finished within 31 hours, one day on the planet they stood upon, a timetable he justified by the gladiatorial days when he and his brothers razed a city on Nuceria in the same time. If any legionary failed, Angron decreed decimation. 1 in 10 would be executed. His brothers would carry out the killings, ripping their victims apart. Wherever the 12th marched, blood flowed in rivers and corpses piled into mounds. "This is too cruel, heartless," Kasha said. "Decimation on that scale, he doesn't value life." Micardo nodded grimly. Primarchs shaped the course of war. Some collateral deaths were inevitable, but the 12th slaughter was wanton. "He is a violent madman," the Emperor said. "His power feeds on negative emotions. The more he kills, the more negative energy he draws in." The Emperor had made them all. He knew their warp essences and the flaws in his sons. Angron had been meant to be a noble warrior, a knight in the old sense, chivalrous, self-sacrificing. But the butcher's nails and the hunger for consumed negative emotion had turned him into a butcher. "Is this Mother's fault? If he'd been raised on Holy Terra, none of this would have happened," Kasha asked. "Yes. Angron suffered most from that crime. Had he not been branded by the nails, had he not awakened that hunger, he would not have become this monster." "Is this why you intend to eliminate him?" Micardo asked. Unchecked killing might be punished, but outright treason was another matter. Space Marines had dark secrets. Other legions had also slaughtered civilians or embraced monstrous practices. Punishment and containment were sometimes possible. "If it were only murder, I would hesitate," the Emperor replied. "I saw more." His eyes shone gold again. The final vision showed Angron standing with other Primarchs, axes raised, roaring defiance at the Emperor, the opening of the Great Heresy. 10,000 years hence, Angron would be utterly corrupted by chaos, transformed into a daemon prince. He is claimed by chaos. Kasha stared, shocked. Micardo's expression went even darker. The first fear that had haunted the Emperor from the moment he began creating the Primarchs had come true. The corruption that consumed Angron wore a blood-red aura, Khorne's mark, oldest and most rapacious of the Chaos Gods. In that vision, the Emperor saw the betrayal of many, but Angron was the only one he could identify by name. "Half of the Primarchs will betray," the Emperor said. "I don't know all their names, but the Great Heresy will come. The Dark King and the Chaos Gods want me enthroned on the Golden Throne. I will sit there, but they must be strong enough to force me into it." Micardo's brow furrowed. If half of the Primarchs will turn traitor, why was Axis present here? Axis should have been at high risk. "In that rebellion I saw a traitor," the Emperor answered, "but I also saw a loyal Primarch. That Primarch was Axis. That is why he stands here." Micardo fell silent. Of course, Axis's presence explained why the Emperor could see that future at all. Without Axis's aid, the Emperor would not have been able to perceive the Great Heresy so clearly. "I think some of the Primarch's personalities carry dangerous flaws," Micardo said after a moment. "There are a few we should watch closely." "Name them," the Emperor said. He wanted his friend's judgment. First, Angron, certainly him. Then Mortarion. His upbringing was poor and bitter. Perdurabo of the Fourth. His upbringing left him with deep wounds. And Sanguinius of the Ninth and Lionel Johnson. Both should be guarded against. Micardo's voice was steady. Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson listed as potential traitors? It shocked Axis inwardly. The first three Micardo named were plausible traitors, but Sanguinius and the Lion were widely regarded as paragons. Sanguinius, the noble angel, and Lionel Johnson, the resolute lord. One even died at his post in the heresy, if the common histories held true. Micardo must be mistaken, Axis thought. Sanguinius is an archangel, and Lionel Johnson is akin to an archangel, the Emperor replied to Axis's doubt. Even archangels can fall. Sanguinius's progeny carry a terrible thirst, the Blood Angel's curse. When we fashioned Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson, we used exceptional materials. They are true archangels. He explained what Micardo already suspected. Primarchs were fragmentary gods born of humanity's ancient beliefs. Guilliman carried the echoes of Roman gods. Leman Russ, Norse, Angron, gods of war. Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson drew from the concept of archangels, hence the names and natures of the Blood Angels and Dark Angels. Their personalities were extreme. Sanguinius could be gentle and refined in peace, ferociously bloodthirsty in battle. Lionel Johnson possessed a ruthless streak that made him the Emperor's most formidable executioner. Axis frowned, murmuring, "Could this be because of the Second Empire?" Micardo's list began to make a stranger kind of sense. In fact, each of the three, Sanguinius, Guilliman, and Lionel Johnson, had once formed a second empire. In the wake of a time when the Emperor was believed dead, the three had established a second empire. Sanguinius was named Emperor. Guilliman served as regent. Lionel Johnson was War Master. They made Macragge the capital and constructed a device similar to the Astronomicon. The Second Empire had been a dark page in their histories, an act that could be read as betrayal, as assertion of independence, or as a necessary response to traitors. In some sense, the three had betrayed the Emperor. In another, they acted for the survival of mankind, and each later returned to the Emperor's fold. The Emperor's gaze hardened. The Second Empire lingered in his recollection like a thorn. He could locate that period in time and see its outlines through his psychic sight. Confusion when the Emperor's presence was thought gone, the three stepping into the void, powers grasped to hold civilization together. Whether the Second Empire they founded would remain a separate polity after the Great Heresy was over, whether it would become an independent rival to his rule, remained an unresolved danger in his mind. From his visions of the future, the Emperor had gleaned fragments about the Second Empire, but he did not know why it had been founded or how terrible the Great Heresy that followed would become. If the visions were true, those three men who created the Second Empire had done so from the depths of despair, perhaps after the Emperor's death and humanity's collapse. Their act was a betrayal, but because their original motives had been earnest, it was a betrayal that might yet be pardoned. After some thought, he said, "For now, put those two under observation, and add Guilliman as well." Even born of good intentions, the formation of a second empire was still treason, and it must be watched. Though Sanguinius had been the public leader of that breakaway realm, the real political center and the territory at its heart were Guilliman's Ultramar, the 500 worlds. The emperor wondered why Guilliman had not taken the title of emperor himself, why he had instead put Sanguinius forward. Was Sanguinius a figurehead, a shield? Why had Lion L. Johnson been involved with Guilliman at all? The questions nagged at him. Micardo inclined his head. Guilliman was one of the rare Primarchs whose strength lay in civil administration rather than merely in battle. He was a master of organization and development. Had he stayed at the rear, managing logistics and governance, the Imperium would have been a different thing. Guilliman had even proposed placing Space Marines, especially Ultramarines, in key civil posts, arguing that augmented warriors could manage the realm more efficiently than ordinary men. The Emperor and Micardo had rejected it. Space Marines were instruments of war, soldiers, not rulers. History had taught them that when a military leader gained the loyalty of civil administrators, dynasties changed. Guilliman's original idea was well-meant but dangerous, and he had never pressed it again. "Neos," Micardo said, "watch Guilliman closely. If anyone will deliver the decisive blow in a betrayal, it would be him. Both you and I know the war potential contained within Ultramar's 500 worlds." Every legion had the method of creating Space Marines. If Macragge desired, given a decade, they could craft 100,000 Astartes, and do it again the next decade. With the Emperor's approval, Guilliman's forces could swell to numbers other Primarchs could only dream of. Axis, standing nearby, allowed himself 3 minutes of solemn thought for the future Regent Guilliman. Guilliman's personal combat was not especially celebrated, stronger than some, weaker than others, but his ability to raise armies quickly and to command them was among the best of the Primarchs. During the heresy, even after half his legion had been cut to pieces, Guilliman replenished and expanded his forces within a few years. Hundreds of thousands of Ultramarines nearly tipped Warmaster Horus into panic. The Chaos Gods had even conspired to strand Guilliman in a warp storm so he could not reach Holy Terra. Had he arrived with those troops, Horus might not have needed to fight. "It's only prudent to take precautions," Micardo said. "Guilliman's war potential may be the greatest among the Primarchs. His surveillance should be raised to the highest level." The Emperor agreed and elevated Guilliman's threat level to the top. Even if Guilliman was loyal now, the sheer power concentrated in Ultramar made him an unavoidable worry. If you were an emperor of an age of feudal armies, and a general commanded hundreds of thousands of heavily armed troops with the capacity to double or triple that number, with a secure and prosperous rear to back him, would you sleep easily? The visions had shown that such fears might be warranted. "Cough, cough. Father-in-law, you don't think Guilliman himself will lead the betrayal, do you?" Axis asked. He voiced the worry plainly. If Guilliman were the ringleader, it would be a terrible misunderstanding. "No," the Emperor replied. "You don't understand Guilliman, nor the strategic depth of Ultramar. His war potential makes him the last person I want to see turn traitor. If anyone is least likely to break with us, it's him." Axis, the Emperor suspected, could perceive parts of the future too, though in limited measure. Without his glimpses, the Emperor might never have learned of the Second Empire or of the larger betrayal that would force him to sit on the Golden Throne. Axis shrugged and resolved to find a quiet moment to warn Guilliman discreetly. The 13th Primarch's mind was keen and would understand a hint. "Put Perturabo of the 4th and Conrad Kurds of the 8th under observation as well," the Emperor said. After further discussion, he and Micardo settled on surveillance targets: Lion L. Johnson, Sanguinius, Perturabo, Conrad Kurds, Mortarion, and Guilliman at the highest monitoring level. The secret session lasted a day. Some Primarchs before them were on the verge of proving traitorous. Some were tragic figures caught in terrible fate. Guilliman, the Emperor thought grimly, was a man who had trouble coming from the sky. Under the Emperor's orders, members of the Assassinorum quietly infiltrated the regions around each target Primarch to begin long-term observation. Over the coming decades, those agents would watch daily life, evaluate tendencies toward treason, and report their assessments to Lord High Counselor Micardo. All members of the 12th Legion, the Warhounds, were summoned immediately. Those fighting abroad laid down their tasks and turned them over to arriving support forces. They were to rendezvous with the Emperor at Nuceria rather than Holy Terra. A few days later, the Emperor returned to the Great Crusade in person, taking command back from Horus. During the Crusade, Horus had frequently had command in the Emperor's absence. He was the only Primarch trusted to lead the Crusade on the Emperor's behalf, but now the Emperor was called back to deal with a matter that required his presence. On the voyage through the warp, Axis stayed aboard the Emperor's flagship, and the two spoke at length. "Father-in-law, you didn't need to come on this mission. I could handle replacing the gene seed of the Warhounds and dealing with Angron," Axis said. "He and his gene seed offspring could do the dirty work. Angron will be the first Primarch to be purged," the Emperor said simply. "I must be there in person." Strictly speaking, Angron had not yet been declared a traitor. The Emperor intended to force the issue, to present himself and see if Angron, as the visions foretold, would raise his weapon against him at their first meeting. "Should the 12th be indoctrinated?" Axis asked. "Erasing their bond with their gene father would save complications." "Let Kasha and the Intellect Library handle what they can," the Emperor said. "A deliberate amnesia campaign could blunt the blow to the Legion when their gene father was removed. The attachment between a Space Marine and his Primarch ran deeper than their loyalty to the Emperor." "Then we should arrive before the Warhounds," Axis decided. "Don't let them see their Primarch. We'll implement the plan directly." 2 months later, the massive fleet led by the Emperor and Axis came into orbit above Nuceria. The presence of such a force froze the slave-owning rulers on the planet. The deterrent was absolute. They opened hails at once, sought parley, and offered surrender. Chapter 159, Surrender at the Speed of Light. Make this planet the Legion's homeworld? Although the slave owners of Nuceria ruled with brutal bloodlust, they were not fools. They knew their limits. The Emperor did not answer them rashly. He ordered the fleet to scan the entire planet and gather detailed intelligence. When the reports reached him in Axis, the Emperor's brow tightened. His face registered deep disappointment. "Honestly, Axis, I'm very disappointed in the 12th Primarch," the Emperor said, voice edged with exasperation. "All the other Primarchs, whatever their faults, became rulers of their worlds. But this one, after all these years, still leads a ragged insurgent army. Look at how they fight. There's no logistics, no supply lines, no allies, just a band of gladiators running amok. Their defeat is almost inevitable." In the Emperor's estimation, Angron, the 12th, should have been a world ruler. He was one of the most formidable among the Primarchs. Yet the Butcher's nails had warped his mind, and Angron led only scattered uprisings with no political or military structure. He refused to accept any soldiers other than gladiators. His forces were nothing but fighters trained for the arena. They looted civilian supplies and lived without discipline, more like brigands than an army. After capturing a city, they would sack it, kill the local masters, then move on. Far from liberators, they were indistinguishable from marauders. The Emperor found it shameful that a being of Angron's potential had fallen to this state. "That Butcher's nails is a brain control device," Axis said quietly. It warped his mind. Axis understood the tragedy. All other Primarchs had established dominions, some across multiple worlds, but Angron, whose combat prowess was among the greatest, had achieved nothing like that. If the Emperor had not come, Angron would have been crushed by the planet's slave owners. Yes, from the moment those nails took hold, he was crippled, the Emperor agreed. We must open negotiations with the slave masters of this planet. A remote conference was convened. From orbit, the Emperor declared himself Lord of Mankind and demanded Nuceria's unconditional surrender and submission to imperial rule. If they refused, he warned, he would annihilate the planet. The slave owners offered conditions. The Emperor rejected them all. His stance was absolute, unconditional surrender or destruction. He gave them exactly 20 minutes. When that time expired, 100,000 Space Marines of the Golden Knights Legion would begin planetary operations. Faced with an orbital armada blotting the sky, the slave owners had no real choice. Their relics of the Dark Age of technology were no match for the Imperium. They possessed no proper war fleet. Reluctantly, they acceded. Frankly, there's no need to keep these scumbags, Axis muttered. The slave owners were vile people. There are too many planets like this in the galaxy, the Emperor replied. We cannot insist on perfect rulers everywhere. The Great Crusade is about bringing humanity into the fold. Across history, oppression and exploitation have been common. We tolerate it so long as a world surrenders, pays tithe, and provides levies for the Imperium. That's the rule I set. There are worse worlds than Nuceria. My thought was to remove the slave owners and install a new ruler. Appoint a planetary governor from the Imperium, Axis suggested. If we did that, a new Grand Slave Master would likely rise, the Emperor said. I've seen it many times. People raised in that system become its perpetuators once they gain power, and stationing an imperial governor would delay the crusade immensely. A planet that surrenders intact is far more valuable. It can be integrated and made productive without years of cleanup. Axis hesitated. We could place one of our own governors then. They would keep order. That would require a governor to maintain at least 200,000 troops to suppress rebellions across the whole world, the Emperor said. It would take a decade or more to stabilize. Most importantly, these people surrendered to me. Trust matters. Think of the case of Sima Yi at the Luo River, the oath and the breaking of it. When someone goes back on their word, their whole house is dishonored. But when a pledge is kept, like Liu Shu, the result is legitimacy and peace. If I break my word, the Imperium loses all credibility. People will say, the Emperor lied first. Why should we trust you? As a sovereign, I must make promises that I keep. If they surrendered, I cannot simply slaughter them. That would destroy the foundation of trust on which the Great Crusade rests. Axis nodded. He understood the point. Maintaining the Emperor's word preserved long-term allegiance and minimized costly warfare. Planets that surrendered voluntarily were far cheaper and quicker to assimilate than conquered worlds. There is another way, the Emperor added after a moment. If you feel sympathy for those gladiators and for this world, I can offer an opportunity. They have surrendered. You could take Nuceria as your homeworld. You would be its supreme ruler. Whatever happens afterward would be your responsibility. Axis was unexpectedly silent. He had no homeworld. Nuceria's size and population base were suitable. Its gladiators, especially the adolescents in training, were elite recruits for Space Marines. To the Emperor, this was a test. To be a proper Primarch, you must be able to govern as well as wage war. If Axis could not manage a homeworld, what kind of Primarch would he be? The Emperor wanted to see whether Axis could steward a planet's internal affairs, convert its raw potential into value, and rule responsibly. Axis considered the offer carefully. Truth be told, the ideal homeworld he had in mind was Catachan, not Nuceria. Catachan's savage, battle-hardened populace would be perfect for replenishing his ranks, but the Imperium had not yet even catalogued Catachan properly, and if it had, establishing a stable flow of recruits would take years. Catachan toughs were not something you could produce overnight. There might not even be humans on that world right now. Still, Axis now held the status of a gene seed Primarch and needed a homeworld to replenish his legion. The planet before him was suitable in every practical way. Besides, who said a Primarch could have only one homeworld? Guilliman's true home was the entirety of Ultramar. Whole sectors could serve a legion's needs. Very well, Axis said. If my lord decrees it, this planet will be the homeworld of the Golden Knights Legion. The Emperor laughed and patted him on the shoulder. It suits you. This world is yours. As a Legion homeworld, I'll grant special tax exemptions. How the old slaveholders would be handled was left to Axis. It was his problem now. The Imperium and Nuceria's rulers signed surrender papers quickly. The slave owners were ordered to the Emperor's flagship within a day to sign unconditional surrenders. They were told their planet would become the seat of a gene seed Primarch. Few of them even understood what that meant, but they could see the new figures now patrolling in towering power armor, bolters and power weapons at their sides. The sight of those giant warriors made many of the slave owners uneasy. Only someone like Angron, they whispered among themselves, could stand against such gladiators. Great Lord of Mankind, one of the slave owners protested when Axis announced the change. You said we could govern ourselves when we surrendered. Why change things now? Once you surrender to the Imperium, Imperial command takes precedence, Axis replied coldly. This world will serve as the homeworld of my legion. Reputation mattered, the Emperor had taught. But all planets served the Great Crusade's ultimate purpose, and being designated a Primarch's homeworld was an unparalleled honor. It meant tax relief, resources, and a direct line for your young to become Astartes. The slave owners, however, were not placated. This is our world. Another snarled. We already agreed to pay tithes. Axis's temper hardened. You surrendered unconditionally. Didn't you mean it? Before the man could answer, Axis's finger flared with a wave of golden energy. The blast tore the speaker into pieces. Silence fell like a hammer. The Emperor had warned Axis about credibility, yet he also watched to see if the new Primarch could enforce decisions. Axis's move was brutal and decisive. The point was made. The surrender had been unconditional. You said no negotiations, then the Imperium's terms stood. Panic spread among the assembled slave owners. Their elite guards drew chainswords and leveled bolters at Axis and the Emperor. But Axis's gene seed offspring were faster. Bolter fire cracked through the air in deadly volleys. Where the slave owners and their retainers surged forward, chainswords cracked, tearing armor and flesh. Nuceria's dark age of technology augments might produce formidable human champions, but they were no match for Space Marines. The elite guards, who had kept local order for generations, were cut down like wheat before a scythe. They never intended to surrender, Axis said with a wry smile. The pretense had given him the cause he needed. My gene seed offspring, this world is our legion's home. Purge the pests, launch a ground strike, eliminate the slave owner private forces. Do not damage the planet. I require it intact. For the Gene Father, for the glory of the Golden Legion, his captains roared. The Golden Knights boarded landing craft and descended en masse. Their goal was surgical, a decapitation campaign to remove the private forces and replace planetary control with imperial governance. The Emperor approved Axis's actions and promised support from the Mechanicus. A training complex and armaments works would be established to bring the world up to Primarch home standards. The assault was merciless and efficient. Space Marines in glittering gold stormed through manors and palaces, annihilating the slave owners' direct forces and executing the extended kin tied to those regimes. Remaining guards were absorbed into the new order or swept aside. Technology and wealth dating from the dark age of technology were seized. In less than half a day, the planet's administration had changed hands. The population woke to find unfamiliar giants in golden armor now in charge. Axis's legion then turned to the scattered gladiator rebellions. These gladiators were not common insurgents. They were the product of Nuceria's genetic engineering culture, enhanced from childhood and further augmented with Dark Age techniques. They were deadly to ordinary humans, ruthless and brutal in their raids, but still beneath the Space Marines in every measurable way. When the Golden Knights engaged, band after band of gladiators was routed. Thousands were reduced to hundreds within hours. The last pockets were quickly surrounded. This world resembles Fenris, the Emperor observed as they watched operations, only themed differently. Fenris was the Nordic park. You landed there before. This one's more Roman. Axis chuckled. If there's a Nordic park and a Roman park, is there a Greek one too? There are many, the Emperor replied. Theme worlds created through genetic technology, Medusa, Hydra, Kraken, myths made flesh. They even engineered races resembling elves and merfolk, Egyptian styles, Eastern motifs. Most of them were lost in the Great Heresy. Fenris and Nuceria are among the few that remain. Axis turned serious. There's a lot of Dark Age tech here, especially systems meant to enhance gladiators. Could that civilian augmentation tech be adapted for Imperial auxiliary troops? If we could mass-produce augmentation with manageable side effects, it might strengthen mortal forces across the frontier. If it can be produced at scale with acceptable risks, then possibly, the Emperor said. But I am skeptical. Civilian augmentation often came with low yields or crippling side effects. Gather what you can. The Mechanicus will evaluate. I will catalog everything and run tests, Axis answered. A nod from the Emperor closed the subject, until a final matter surfaced. First, deal with Angron, he said. He's been surrounded by your gene seed offspring. We should go there next.